Good evening. I would like to call the Budget Committee meeting of November the 5th, 2025 to order. Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Russell, Councillor in Chair of the Budget Committee. I would like to begin by reading a safety notice. In the event of emergency, please evacuate council chambers. We do have a lot of fans here tonight, so please go out single file. To the nearest exit through the chamber doors and obey all instructions given. If assistance is required, please see the clerk. Once you have evacuated the building, please gather in the front parking lot outside of Town Hall. Also, please ensure your cell phones are all silent or are turned off. And lastly, the Town of Lincoln Council meetings are posted on our YouTube channel. Closed captioning is available on all videos by selecting the closed captioning button on the bottom right of the video. Roll call, members of committee are in attendance, and we also have staff in attendance. Declarations of interest, are there any declarations of interest? No, seeing none. We have no statutory public meetings, we have no delegations, and we have no consent agenda items. So we are now moving on to a regular agenda, and we are now considering item 7.1, report FN-12-25, 2026 budget. Staff will be presenting the draft 2026 capital budget for committee's consideration under the strong mayor budget process. The mayor is going to provide some introductory comments, followed by our CAO. Mayor Easton, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, council members and staff, members of the public who are viewing. Thank you very much for joining us as we begin our 2025 budget deliberations. This is our first budget under the new strong mayor legislation. And while the tools available to us may have changed, the priorities and values that guide our decisions have not. And I instructed staff to begin the budget process using the same methodology that they have used for the last 11 years. And to continue in the same manner, as I believe that what we have been doing mostly presents information and priorities according to our mission, vision, and values, as well as strategic priorities and the work plan that has been developed for us. This is a process that involves council, but it also involves stakeholders throughout Lincoln and beyond, as there are many people that do business with and in our community. And so everyone has a stake in what is going to be discussed here this evening and any other meetings following it. The budget recognizes the financial pressures that many residents and businesses continue to face, and it reflects our commitments to being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. At the same time, it invests strategically in both our immediate needs and our long-term priorities as a growing community. Tonight, you will hear from members of the senior leadership team as they walk us through the key components of the budget, with a particular focus on the capital program. We are approaching this budget with the same principles of transparency, planning, and accountability that have guided council in previous years, even as the governance framework evolves. There is an amending formula that is available to council, and the amending formula is the councilor's opportunity to make any changes that they believe are necessary. And based on the their interpretation of the public priorities, which have been laid out quite well, not only in this presentation this evening, which came from a formal questionnaire, but also from all the other comments and commentary that come to each and every member of council throughout the year. So it's not just a focus on a few months in the fall of the year. And I must say that I was quite pleased to see the number of participants, but also the very, very clear effort that people have put into grouping priorities and to being very clear about what those are, so that assists council to a very great extent. So while the amending formulas allow council the opportunity to have a second look from what they have been given by the staff, they will also have to take into account the impact of any changes that are made, because the community is accustomed to a certain level of standard. And so any impact will have to be discussed in terms of how it may change the timing or the lack of timing when services are delivered. You will hear specifically about areas such as fire services, community engagement, critical capital infrastructure, as those areas have specifically been broken out. These areas and all capital investments ensure that we can continue to deliver safe, reliable, and high-quality services while preparing for the future. I want to thank staff for the work that has gone into preparing this budget, and I look forward to the discussions ahead as we continue working together to build a strong, affordable, and sustainable Lincoln. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor Easton, and I believe our CAO has some comments as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, Madam Mayor, Chair Russell, Vice Chair Reimer, and members of council. As we kick off this year's budget process, and I feel like I say this to you every year, but budget is year-round work. It isn't something we just deal with at the end of each year. And it is critical in terms of how we set priorities, manage resources responsibly, and ensure that financial sustainability of our municipality remains at the forefront. The decisions we make here will have direct and important impacts. We're discussing capital tonight, but as you've seen, our budget and the budget information that you've received to date will include a lot of the operating conversations. And we're going to talk about other things tonight. We're going to talk about fire services and some of the drivers there. We're going to talk a little bit about engagement. And we're going to talk about how we look at all of that moving forward. There are a number of large-scale issues that we're all dealing with and that people are dealing with, and many not in our control, and we don't lose sight of that. I know council doesn't lose sight of that, but they are things that we're cognizant of and aware of. As you've heard, the process has changed a bit. The timelines are condensed. We are looking at things this year differently, but the one thing that hasn't changed is that we're going to work closely with council. We're going to attempt to answer any questions, both during the meetings, after the meetings, and before the subsequent meetings, and ensure that we communicate information and decisions clearly, openly, and in a timely manner. As you've heard from the mayor, tonight you're going to hear from a number of us. I'll be presenting the engagement information to you. Director Graham will be talking a little bit about our capital program. Fire Chief Greg Hudson's going to take you into some of the drivers in terms of the fire budget. And of course, CLT's here to answer any particular questions that council may have. So as we do every year, I encourage council to approach the process thoughtfully, collaboratively, and it is our goal, as I've said before, to ensure that every dollar allocated supports council's priorities, addresses the community priorities you're going to hear about shortly, and also reflects the responsible stewardship of public resources. So look forward to getting into the details, Mr. Chair, and I'll turn it over to you again.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. The Director of Finance Treasurer will now begin the presentation. For the first half of the presentation, after each presenter, we will stop for a Q&A period before continuing on to the next section. We will then have a short recess before the second half of the presentation. Just a reminder for all of council, if you are referencing capital projects with any of your questions, please use the binder and make sure you illustrate or mention the page number it's on and also the project number when you're asking your questions, so everybody's working out the same information. Director Tunakaitis, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm thankful to be here tonight to present to you the first meeting of the 2026 budget. What will we be discussing today? We'll do a reminder of the budget process for 2026, review the budget engagement results, and then we'll go through the 2026 capital budget overview, including the renewal programs in each area of the budget. And then finally, we'll talk about asset management plan and the infrastructure gap. And then finally, we'll just do a recap on the budget schedule. So as a reminder, where are we in the process? On October 28th, the mayor started the budget process. When the agenda was published online, the budget became public information, and we are now in the budget deliberation period. During this time, councillors may propose amendments to the budget from October 28th to November 24th. To streamline the process, the meeting tonight will focus on capital, and then the November 12th meeting next week will focus on operating. Amendments can be proposed on November 5th, November 12th, or November 24th if applicable. So by that we mean if you have amendments that you wish to propose about the capital budget, that can still come forward at next week's meeting. Just in case there are questions about that tonight, because you may get more information tonight that may lead you down that road. If there are no additional amendments received for the November 24th meeting by November 14th, the November 24th meeting will be canceled. So if staff have no indication that there are any further amendments coming forward, we'll look at everything that's come in at that point in time, and then the clerk will go through that and make that determination. Staff have provided a budget amendment request form template. And those amendments must be submitted in writing to the clerk, and each amendment will be considered individually. So as a recap, tonight we'll talk about the budget survey and engagement results, the capital presentation, and other ancillary information, which for this evening is particularly a presentation from the fire chief. On the November 12th meeting, we will go over the operating presentation and the library presentation, and we have requested the amendment forms for that meeting by November 7th. So this Friday, to give us time to review calculations, provide comment, and process those forms. And then the November 24th budget amendment meeting, if required, we would just review the amendments, and if there are no amendments, the meeting would be canceled. Again, we're requesting those forms by November 14th because that's the time when a determination will be made if that meeting is necessary. If there are no amendments, the budget would be deemed adopted after November 24th. So after that agreed upon deliberation period, which is legislated, but council agreed to shorten by a couple of days, that's when the budget would be deemed adopted. After that time, if there are amendments, on December 2nd could potentially be a mayoral veto. If there are amendments, and if the mayor vetoes an amendment, which we do not know whether either one of those things will happen, the veto would be provided in writing with reasons to the clerk and council. If there are no vetoes, so meaning if there are amendments that come forward and they are not vetoed, then the budget would be deemed adopted after December 2nd. So at each stage in the process, it's deemed adopted if that timeline lapses and there's nothing else that leads it to the next step of the process. If there are amendments which are vetoed by the mayor, then on December 15th council meeting, that's when council could vote on whether to override the veto with a vote of 2/3 of council. If the process has progressed to an override vote, the budget would be deemed adopted after December 5th, either as amended or not. So throughout that process, if there are amendments, there could be a combination of outcomes, depending whether the amendments pass, whether they are vetoed, and whether the vetoes are overridden. So with that, this is the overview of our timeline. And we've placed a red circle where we're at today on November 5th. We're at the capital budget meeting, and we're pretty much right at the start of all the budget deliberation meetings. So at this time, I'll turn it back over to the chair if there are any questions on this portion of the presentation.
Thank you, Director Tunikaitis. Any questions from council? Oh, we've got Councillor Mikulik up first. Go ahead.
Hey there. Thank you, Chair Russell, through you to Charlotte. Just a question about ratification. And I'm reading the word adoption, but I'm not seeing ratification. So what's council's role? Like, at some point, there must be a bylaw that's approved or not approved by council. I think it's a tax levy increase. There would be a tax levy increase amount bylaw that we would have to approve. Is that still applicable? And when would that occur?
Okay.
I guess two questions for one.
So through you, Chair, to the councillor. So that is a key change of the strong mayor legislation. It's something that we've been reviewing even in some of the professional webinars that I've been attending. The wording now is no longer approval, it's adopted. So there isn't a vote of approval, and I see the clerk looking at me. I'm sure she will step in if I say anything, but we've both been to our fair share of webinars at this point in time. There is no longer a vote of approval. It's just when that time period lapses, it's deemed adopted at that point in time. So if there are no amendments, it's deemed adopted as provided by the mayor. If there are amendments and she does not veto, it's deemed adopted as amended, and so on. We would still need a levy bylaw, and that usually happens not until early next year when we have the region rates, and we have the school board rates and all of those things. But the budget process itself, it just kind of goes through those timelines, and then when they finish, it's deemed to be an adopted budget.
Okay, so just to clarify, so theoretically, if a councillor was not in favor of the levy increase, they could vote against that levy increase at that time? When you have the sum of all expenses and sum of all estimations and the sum of all everything, theoretically, there's still an opportunity for a council member to vote against that levy increase.
So through you, Chair, if it's okay, I would turn it over to the clerk on that procedural matter, because that's a little bit hard to understand how that would process if we've followed those procedures, but that's not one I can answer on my own.
So I would say that Charlotte has explained the budget process perfectly. In terms of the bylaw itself, that would be something that, if I'm understanding correctly, like you could put through a vote. If it fails, I believe the mayor can have a say in that matter. But essentially, I mean, the budget is adopted as presented. That's how it's going to play out. In terms of the levy bylaw, my understanding is that council would have a vote like they always do. That doesn't change. But I don't know. I don't know. This is our first time, but to my understanding that the mayor would have a say in that.
So just a point of clarification, is that something that we can come back to council with at the next meeting and just clarify?
We can. I would say that, yeah, I don't have an answer for that at this time. It'll be interesting, but I do believe that the vote is still the vote in terms of the bylaw.
Mr. CAO has a comment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, maybe I'll add one piece just to kind of clarify for anybody who's watching and even for members of council. As you heard from both our treasurer and the clerk, there's three parts to that. There's the education portion, the regional portion, and maybe I'll highlight those two. You don't have a say on those two. What the region does with the education, what the province does through the education levy, you also don't have a say in. So to suggest maybe not voting for those, I think while it may be a symbolic gesture, I don't think you're able to actually do that. So when the levying bylaw comes together to approve all three, you really, again, you may want to make a symbolic gesture, but I don't think it actually holds, it holds merit. We can definitely try to get an interpretation on that for you and make sure council has it. But your opportunity to either put an amendment forward to voice displeasure or anything otherwise happens with the process that we've outlined to you with respect to the one that we're in control of. As council has heard me say many, many times, About a third of the budget, third of what you're going to approve there is ours. The other 2/3 falls between the other two levels. So again, I think it can be a symbolic gesture, but I don't actually think it holds ground and is legally binding. But that's one of those things we can get back to you between now and our next meeting. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, as I said, I'm curious, like, how that process or how that procedure works, as far as council's role or council's ability to, vote. And I think that, yeah, like as I mentioned, I think there's a bylaw, a living bylaw that has to be approved, and, it's yes, no, or abstain. So I don't know how other municipalities, if it's ever come up before, or if it's ever been an issue, but, you know, I'm not saying we're gonna be the first, but I'd like to know the questions to answers before you cross those bridges, so thank you.
Yeah, no, it was a good question. Again, we are going through this for the first time on our side, so we are going to be learning all the machinations of what the requirements are. But again, if there is a clarification that staff can bring back for the next meeting, they can. Otherwise, we will move forward as planned. Councillor Timmers, you're up next.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Ms. Tunakaitis. So I'd asked this question before, but I just want to have a little bit of clarity. So when someone wants to put an amendment in, so tonight, there are no amendments because we're just having a first look. But at the next meeting, if there are amendments, and maybe this is for Madam Clerk as well, would they be included in the agenda for the next meeting so that all of council sees what the amendments are? I think I've asked this, I just want to clarify it.
Director Tunakaitis?
I'll start and through you, Chair, and if the clerk would like to jump in, she can. So yes, this is part of why we've asked for the amendments to be provided to us by the Friday before so that staff have time to calculate, provide any operational comments on the impact of that, and then the intention is to publish them on the agenda and ensure that all of council has them. So that is part of the reason why we propose the process like that. I'm not sure if the clerk wants to add. No, she's shaking her head, so.
Okay, that's clear. I just wanted to be sure, and so no amendments can just be put on the table at the meeting. These amendments must be put in writing on the form prior. So we're not going to be accepting any fly amendments.
Madam Clerk, do you have a comment?
Through you, Chair, to the councillor. So as we presented previously, the reason why we've asked council to kind of follow this structured process in terms of providing those amendments earlier is so that the justification that is for those amendments, we can come prepared to council and explain that. If council chooses to put forward amendments at this table, I cannot guarantee council that you will have those answers or that breakdown of information on how that does affect the budget going forward. It's in council's best interest to do those ahead of time in order to ensure that the public as well as council are making informed decisions and the public is also informed of what that looks like in terms of the budget process. So, Charlotte, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that.
No, that's very clear, and I'm quite happy with that new process. So thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Timmers. I see no other questions. Back to Councillor Tunakaitis for part two. Or Director Tunakaitis for the next portion.
Thank you, Chair. So at this time, I'm going to turn this over to our CAO, and he's going to provide some commentary on the 2026 budget engagement. And so I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Charlotte, and through you, Mr. Chair, to members of council. I will be taking you through our 2026 budget engagement. It is an opportunity for us to look at some of the information that's come through. By no means is, I think as I said to you in my opening comments, the engagement that we receive here the only engagement we get. We do get engagement year-round, and I think we can all agree that that's an opportunity for us to hear priorities, It's an opportunity for us to take that information in, and then using other data sets that we have, come to you with information relative to this budget. I recognize, though, that engagement results, such as survey data, often do attract criticism. We've heard it around this very table. Did enough people weigh in? What do people think? Were the questions written right? I've probably, in doing this here for 10 years and the previous 15 before that, heard all sorts of levels of criticism. We often look at how many people weigh into our budget survey, determine, is that statistically correct? Is it not? What does it mean? How do we get more people? I share that, I think, to say to you that, again, you've heard me say it before, it is a snapshot. It's one tool that we have. I can say we had over 100 residents at the most recent ward meeting. That's engagement too. People talk to us about all sorts of issues in terms of what matters to them. So a survey is a snapshot. Today we received information from our partners at the Chamber, representing over 280 businesses. That in and of itself is also a level of engagement. So while survey results are maybe not what all council oftentimes likes to see in terms of thousands and thousands of people weighing in on what they think about budget, it is, again, a snapshot that I'm going to take you through. So we do have a dedicated page on Speak Up Lincoln relative to this budget, as we've had in the past. We do share key updates and key dates on there. We put up budget presentations. We share infographics. It does also have, as it highlights here, information from previous year's budget. Page visits this year, so a little bit of data in terms of what we saw. We did see an increase of about 17% in terms of how many people visited it. Now, visiting it doesn't mean people took the survey. It just means we had over 1,000 people look at it, maybe to get some information, maybe to see some dates. We also saw people open videos, look at the documents, and just, as I said, read the information that's on the page. We did look at a little bit of an engagement strategy that was enhanced from previous years. It ran from August to the beginning of October. And not only did it have the survey, as we've done in years past, but we also had a budget prioritization tool. Hearing what council said last year, we wanted to try something a little bit different. We did have hard copy surveys available throughout Lincoln facilities because, again, as we hear at ward meetings and otherwise, people get information in different ways. We also did some in-person engagement. We had postcards for councillors to hand out when you were at various events. And we also had our director and other staff at Fling Off King on September 27th, handing out and talking to people and trying to get them to talk about budget. She did share with me today that not everybody who comes up to the booth wanted to talk budget. Some people just wanted to know everything from where they get a driver's license to a whole bunch of other things. And those are the same things we get when people walk into our building. Not everybody understands government the way we do. Not everybody understands or is open to sharing kind of what they think on a bunch of fronts. A lot of people want to talk about services. If you ask someone, do you pay too much in taxes? You usually get an answer like, yes, I'd like to pay less in taxes. So it was an interesting exercise in terms of that in-person engagement, and we did see a spike in visits following that, at least on the following 2 days. In terms of promotion, we often get asked, did we promote it? Did we encourage people to take part? Here's a list of all the things we did do. As I said, we did a bit of a digital media campaign this year, which was new. We used social media. We used monitors in town facilities, QR codes, bill inserts, community newsletters, print media, and so forth. In terms of participation, as you can see here, 201 participants between the budget prioritization tool, the survey, and the comment form. Some information in terms of the past 3 budgets, in terms of responses. And again, typical, as you've seen in the past, members of council, in terms of the breakdown on where people are coming from that fill out our survey. The majority are respondents from Beamsville, followed by Vineland and Vineland Station, and then lastly at around 10% from Jordan and Jordan Station. Budget survey, satisfaction, and priorities. Do you receive value for your tax dollar? Generally speaking, when we talk about service, when we talk about value, and those two things really are synonymous with one another, little over 3/4 of people had a positive response. Where would you like to see investments made? As you can see there, the top 5 responses probably align very much to what you see in the capital program, public works, and public and open spaces, which includes our parks. We often hear that when we're talking to residents, when we're at public meetings, and when we're at ward meetings. Obviously, infrastructure. I wish I could tell you, or had a dollar for every time someone said, do more roads, pave my road. Obviously, something we hear a lot about in terms of infrastructure and capital costs. Fire rescue service, again, you're going to hear a little bit more about that this evening. Planning and municipal law enforcement. Again, when we talk about municipal law enforcement, no surprise to members of council, everyone would love to see a lot more of those sorts of things. And lastly, a focus on tourism, culture, communications, and economic development. If council had a chance to read the letter that came in today, again from our partners at the chamber, it did speak to jobs, it spoke to retention of businesses, it spoke to supports for businesses, which again I think aligns very much to where it falls in terms of the top 5. Which council priorities should be addressed in terms of the 2026 budget? You can see there the top 4 responses in a lot of ways align to the top 5 in terms of where investments are being made and where we should see investments. And so safe, healthy, and environmentally responsible community, investing in our parks, transportation, responsible financial management in collaboration with other levels of government, and of course the 4th one there, engagement, inclusivity, and transparency. We also included a question similar to one from last year's budget survey that talked about if you were going to contribute an extra $50 to help enhance a program or service that was meaningful to you. Are you in favor of that option or not in favor of that option? 73% of people answered that, 27% chose to skip it. For those who replied, the top 3 services that they would like to see continued investment in are as follows there. Again, very much aligning to what we're hearing, to what you're seeing in this capital program. Public works, which is really our roads, public and open spaces, which is our parks, fire, rescue service, and generally infrastructure and more capital. In terms of our budget prioritization tool, you see a couple of photos there on the right side of the screen in terms of how we allowed people and we gave them hypotheticals, how they would like to see their money spent. So a chance for us to look at and to give people maybe a little bit more of a tool where they could take some control. So we gave them a hypothetical $100 budget, and then participants allocated dollars to various service areas. There were minimums and maximums that were predetermined with set increments, and no area could be allocated as $0. 115 contributions to this exercise were made, with the average spend being less than the $100 they were given, at a little over $93. A minimum spend we saw of 64, where people dialed back and wanted to do less work, with a maximum spend of the entire 100 that they were given. Again, probably no surprise when you look at the top 5 service areas that people funded using this tool: fire and rescue service, the library, community services, infrastructure and capital, and the top 5 being rounded out by the BDSS site. There's always comment forms available on our sheets, on our engagement. 26 comments of the 200 and change that had an opportunity to do so were provided, so not a lot, and several key themes emerged. Our tool allowed us to kind of highlight what some of those key themes were. So we heard Obviously, on both ends of that spectrum, we hear things like, invest more money in libraries, we love libraries, to we hate you, and a whole bunch of other things. And that is sometimes the anonymity that comes with these types of tools. And so, no, I'm not sharing with you that type of information. What I am sharing with you are the themes that came out. Obviously, affordability being the largest and darkest is the one that came out, but some other interesting ones for us. Jordan Lyons Pool, also a large font here, which I think speaks to, again, where people put some of their priorities. The library as well, followed by, again, you can see the various words there: low-rise development, diversify the economy, infrastructure, public safety, support businesses, farm came out a lot, and municipal law enforcement. So open to questions, comments, any clarity the council may have. Obviously, Paul and Liliana, who are much more hands-on in this, are here to answer any questions you may have, but I can also attempt to do that as well.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. I will now open it up to questions from council. And I have Councillor Bernay, first in the hopper.
Thank you, Chair Russell. So, Mr. CEO, just a couple of very quick, high-level comments, and there's nothing, there's no hidden gun here. So, on one of the slides early in your presentation, you showed Beamsville at 66%, and then you showed Vineland, Vineland Station, Jordan, and Jordan Station. I didn't see any reference to Camden and Tintern. I was just wondering, does that mean that no one from Camden and Tintern commented, or was it put into another category?
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Chair, to the Councillor. We might have just had a very small percentage of Camden. I think we might have not just presented it in the presentation. But we did have representation from across the community.
Okay. Thank you. Just a follow-up question on the slides, Mr. CEO. So I was happy to see the increase in the amount of visitors. I think it was 1,400 visitors, up, I think, 17%. So that was great. I'm just wondering, when we look out, how did we capture those comments? Because, I think there's some great wording up there, from affordability to we don't like you, but the 26, I'm just concerned about, why is it 26? We got 1,400 people, touching our website, which is great, but how did we go to look at ascertaining comments?
So through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, I'll definitely let Liliana chime in. I know I fill out a number of surveys, some I'm asked to do, some I voluntarily do. I think often it's easier to kind of check off a box than it is to take the time, sometimes the analytical time it takes to write a response, and to write one that's fruitful, one that talks about affordability, or one that talks about, here's what I think about the Jordan Lyons Pool. And so, I think it's often one of those things that we don't always expect residents to spend time to add the anecdotal piece to it, one that we would love to see more of. But at the end of the day, 26 is what we've got, and we try to encourage that dialogue more. But as to why, maybe Liliana can chime in. But I would say, I think, again, being one that fills out a lot of surveys, I don't often spend a ton of time on the anecdotal piece. I really fill out the survey in terms of what questions are asked for me, because people are challenged with time. The surveys already take 15 to 20 minutes. And unless you're really engaged in budget, and if I think about the Ward 2 meeting, how many times you and Councillor Pachariva tried to prod residents to even ask a question around budget at that particular meeting. I look at Councillor Russell, our chair, nodding, same thing. People often, it isn't an immediate focus versus something else that we engage with them on, but definitely something that we can continue to try to ascertain and pull out, but Liliana may have some additional comments.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, to the councillor. What we did this year with the engagement tools, and the CAO spoke to it early on in the section of the presentation, we sectioned out the different engagement tools. So whereas in previous years, we had a quite lengthy survey. We looked at ways to chunk that out so that there were a few different tools. People could come in, they were kind of shorter, more bite-sized engagement opportunities, so people could, they wouldn't get caught up in a really long survey. That was some of the feedback that we heard in previous years. So the comment form was actually separated out from the survey. In previous years, we would have comments as part of the survey. So we would have like an open-ended question. People could provide comments on what else they wanted to see as part of the budget. This year, we just brought that out as a separate tool. So in previous years, you wouldn't necessarily have comments or those qualitative answers included, like those were optional, they were optional questions, and we would not have everyone who participated in the survey answering that question. So that's why you're going to see that the number of comments is lower than the participation in the survey or the prioritization tool. Also, the word cluster represents some of the key themes, and you see like some of the words were a little bit bigger than others, and that's where the themes were represented over several comments.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate those comments. I just, the only reason I bring it up is, I think we can all agree that we want to continue to improve. And it's great that we're celebrating, the number of visitors to our site, and it's up 17%. But, that could be Councillor Michalak jumping on our site 1,000 times. So I'm just saying, I would rather see comments that are that have substance as I go into budget. And when I look up there and I see the word affordability in bold, that sends me a message. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bernay. Councillor Gemma, you are up next.
Thank you, Chair Russell. My question is about the fact that 66% of the respondents were from Beamsville. So is that just strictly because of a higher population density, or is there other considerations that go into those percentages?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll take a stab at the answer. I think you're absolutely correct, Councillor. Part of it is population-based, but part of it is just how people engage. I would say in Beamsville, there are probably more people apt to use, if you look at the demographics, if you look at a number of other factors, are probably apt to use technology, social media, get their information electronically, and would engage in that type of survey. Yes, we made it available in all of our facilities for those that wanted to fill out a hard copy, but I think most of it's simply based on the fact that that's where our population is, and oftentimes, historically, we've seen a little bit more engagement from the Beamsville area. I can tell you, though, that if you ask me where people like to engage the most face-to-face, I'd probably tell you it's on the east end of town. Some of the most spirited conversations I have with people on budget and other issues, come from our Jordan and Vineland parts of the community. And so I think it's just the way in which people engage, the way in which people receive information. And like I said, the survey is a snapshot. The survey is one tool, not the only tool that we're using.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gemma. We have Councillor Murray up next.
Thank you very much. I think this is probably going to go to the communications department. I'm really excited to see that it's a 17% increase in page visits, which is great. We've heard a lot over the last year about communications and the challenges around communications and people feeling that, they're not hearing what's going on. So it's great to see that there's an increase in engagement. I have a couple of questions. One of them would be, what do you think is driving that increase? What tools do we use this year that drove a 17? Like, are we thinking it's the postcards that we sent, or what that was? And then I'll let you answer that one first before I go to my next question. How's that?
Yes, please.
Through you, Chair, to the councillor. So it was definitely Charlotte being at Fling Off King,
There you go. Well done,
Madam Chair. But I think it was a multitude of reasons, really. It was that first, in-person touch that we had. It was the print that we had. It was the postcards. It was the digital. I think we continue to do a multifaceted approach. We give people the opportunity to engage, and they're going to engage.
And that's really good. I just want to, lessons learned, so that the next thing that comes up, that we want to make sure we're getting a lot of engagement, we're using the same things that are successful, so that 17% can continue to grow, so that, we're regularly seeing incremental improvement in how we're reaching people. So that's excellent. The page visits question that I have, so 1.4 is great. 1.4 thousand is excellent. Though when you say that those who participated used one or more, they viewed the videos, they opened the budget book, they also read the information on the page. That 1.4, is that only people who engaged at that level, or does that also include people who clicked on the page and 2 seconds later were off the page?
So so through you, Chair, I'm going to turn over to Lilian, but I'm fairly confident that is people that visit the page, and then there's some additional information on what they do when they're on there, but Lilian.
That is correct. So through you, Chair, to the councillor, that is correct, that it's people who actually are on the page and are on, are.
So they're there for more than 30 seconds?
Yes,
and
that's
okay.
correct. Mhm.
All right, that's excellent, and then kudos on the work, getting the word out. I know it's a huge challenge, and well done, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray, and we have Councillor Miklik up next.
Very much through you to our CEO. So something that was brought up is affordability, and I struggle. I don't know what's affordable anymore. Everyone's just telling me that everything's costing more. But so when I read this letter this afternoon from the Chamber of Commerce, one of the points here is ensuring tax increases remain reasonable and manageable for families and businesses so that Lincoln continues to be affordable, competitive place to live, work, and invest. Competitive. So when I look at past increases that we've had, and I'm curious where and what's being presented initially this evening, I'm trying to understand what's our competitiveness looking like with the past increases that we've had and this increase that we're facing this year.
Just a point of clarification, Councillor Miklik.
With respect to
Competitiveness
other-
in terms of other municipalities?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
What's a tax bill looking like for somebody in Niagara-on-the-Lake compared to somebody in Lincoln?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the clarification. Yeah, that's an interesting question, Councillor, in terms of, me, I think, trying to understand where you're going with it and maybe how to answer it for you. If you're asking me, how do we compare to others in terms of our competitiveness, I would say the fact that we continue to get calls from businesses, that businesses continue to reach out both through the chamber as well as our own staff in terms of seeking opportunities here, seeking space here, seeking land here, makes me think we are competitive. Competitiveness isn't just the level of taxation, but it's the level of service one receives. It's the incentives potentially that are in place, both from ourselves and the region. It is the transportation networks we have. It's proximity to the GTHA. It is transit opportunities. I think there's a whole bunch of things that go into that competitiveness and our ranking in terms of where we stand. So I think when the chamber and the letter we received, when I read a comment like that, I think it's keep taxes in check, make sure we remain affordable, but at the same time, let us be competitive, not only with our area municipalities in Niagara, but those also that are neighboring to us in terms of what we offer, safe communities, good value for taxpayer dollars, affordable housing, all those other sorts of things. So I think it's much more of a holistic competitiveness, not just the municipal tax burden versus other things, whether they be provincial, federal, or otherwise in nature.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. It's just, businesses, real estate, property owners, first thing they say, okay, yeah, it's a good deal. What are the property taxes like? What's the carrying cost? So I want to make sure that we're still competitive in that regard. That's why I bring that issue up. And second question that kind of pigtails off of that is, have we asked, the region set a direction of 3.5%. I don't know if they're going to achieve that or not. I think they're struggling the day after they pass that motion. But whatever the case, has the Chamber of Commerce provided an opinion of what they think is a reasonable tax increase? Are they expecting inflation? Are they expecting 8%, 10%, 5%, 6%? Do they provide any sort of input as far as what they consider to be representing the number of families, business owners?
So just a point of clarification on that as well. So again, you referenced the region there. Are you asking if the chamber weighed in on the region's budgetary guidance or on our?
Ourselves as a municipality. I just say that, when targeted budget, like, what is this for? And I'm trying to understand affordability. is an increase of 6% affordable. That's what, I don't know.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I'll attempt to answer the question. Again, I don't like speaking for other boards or agencies, but I did have a conversation, albeit briefly, with our Chamber of Commerce, and their executive director is here this evening. But I don't think they're looking at it quite the way the councillor is, I think, asking the question. I would suggest, and I'll go back to my previous answer, when one talks about competitiveness, it isn't just what am I paying in municipal taxes. Municipal taxes is one of a list of a number of things that makes a municipality, that makes a region, that makes an area competitiveness. So did they look at it and say the increase should be X, the increase should be Y? No, they didn't. You're going to get sick of hearing me talk about this. I know we only control our portion of it, but we are 1/3 of that tax bill. So I could give you a negative number and taxes potentially could still go up by 6% because the region and the education portion of the tax accounts for 2/3 of the property tax bill. That is not to say that we shouldn't be doing hard work. We shouldn't be getting our number as low as possible, but we only account for 37% of that particular bill. So it's about doing our job well, but about offering other things that continue to make us what I would say is competitive. And for me, the proof is, do the calls still come in? Do people still come to us? Do people still get good service? I would tell you one question I hear more than what are my property taxes from businesses is how quickly can I get through your processes? Are you efficient? How long before I can get a building permit? And those are the things that I often look at, in addition to what are the business property taxes that people get charged. And so, I don't think I've totally answered your question, and not because I'm trying not to, but because that's not necessarily how the conversations with our partnering agencies and other agencies that weigh in typically roll.
No, and again, I'm through you. It's just the fourth bullet point in this letter that we received this afternoon that generated those sorts of thoughts in my head, and trying to understand what we can and can't do, and that's why I bring that up. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Miklick. And again, I think actually there's a good tool that the region provides that I did post this week, and I did mess around with a little bit, that actually you can go municipality, my municipality in the region, enter in a assessed home value, and then see what the taxation would be in that municipality. And I believe we ranked the 4th lowest out of the Niagara municipalities on the same horse. Yeah, it's an interesting tool to utilize. I was quite fascinated by the information and relieved at the outcomes.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I want to commend that comment and appreciate the fact that you did put it out there, and that we are the 4th lowest, in case the chair's comments weren't heard.
Okay. Yeah. I'll send it over to you. Or follow me on Facebook, and you'll get it right there. Councillor Pachariva, you are next in the queue.
Thank you very much, Chair Russell. And probably a question to Mr. Kirkopoulos, Mr. Deanne, and even the mayor. So thank you very much for the increase in engagement. Having, been a former employee at Stats Canada, I like that stuff, right? I find that fascinating. And Mr. Kirkopoulos actually mentioned, doing surveys. I'm the same. I think it's my duty to do a survey, having been involved in that industry. And again, making it easy, check boxes, because it does take a lot of time. I noticed a couple weeks ago, and fascinated by it, because the number of people too that say they don't have computers or they're not on social media. One of the tools that the city of St. Catharines does is that the mayor holds like a town hall over the phone for 1 hour and talks budget. So wondering if we've ever reached out to them to get the level of engagement, kind of questions that are asked, and get their thoughts on that. Maybe that's something that we can explore going forward, because that way you cover everything, right? You've got print covered, you've got digital media covered, you've got old-fashioned telephone covered, right? So I think in that aspect too, and you can opt out from that process. So at least it gives a lot of residents an opportunity to engage, and they can't say we didn't try, right? Because we've used all formats. Just want to get your thoughts on that, because I think that might be something helpful going forward.
Mr. CAO?
Through you, Mr. Chair, why don't I take a stab at it first? So we have talked about it. We do see what St. Catharines is doing. I've used them in the past in a previous role, and so they do work. At times, they can be costly, and so I think if we're going to make a conscious decision to go in that direction, and maybe the cost has come down depending on, I think, the scope, how we want to do it, how many of them we're doing, how many people we're going to actually call, et cetera. It could be something we do, maybe do less of something else in terms of ads and the traditional outreach, and maybe try something like this before. I know the mayor mentioned it, and we did say that it was cost prohibitive, but definitely something we can look at. It's about prioritizing and maybe looking at, do we do something different one year than another year and completely go away from this? I will say that residents who have reached out, and we do have a couple of very keen residents who like to talk surveys with us and like to provide us their advice and their perspectives. I've asked a few of them even, and I suspect they're watching this evening, but I have asked them to share with me who does it well, who doesn't do it well, point us to a direction. And so I think there's a benefit to us also looking at and maybe trying to learn from others who do it. We naturally do that in terms of talking around various tables to learn, but I said, outside of Niagara, is there someone that's really nailing it and doing it really, really well in terms of engagement? And so got some ideas. And again, we can also have the one-on-one conversations with residents. We do. A lot of residents reach out to us and want to have conversations about surveys or about budget, and we do provide them more information and find, again, different ways to engage with them. But point duly noted in terms of the telephone town hall approach.
Okay, that's terrific, because, it tweaked me again, sending the email to you, collecting the data from Councillor Brunet and my ward meeting, is that, we had the sign-in sheet that it had the name, it had an email, and it had a telephone number. And I think part of the reason we had such great engagement at ours is that, we leveraged what staff did, social media, newspaper. Councillor Brunet and I both posted on socials, and actually I texted it to over 75 residents, just took the snapshot of the picture that staff provided, and the engagement was there. So we tried to use everything out there possible, and it works. It does work. So I just thought of that going forward. If we're collecting this information, we can use it, going forward. So appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to that point, I also think sometimes a burning platform of sorts, a galvanizing issue is what gets people out, and we've seen that
True.
On particular issues. So I'm encouraged by the amount of people and the outreach that both you and Councillor Brunet did, but I also think one particular issue really drove people to attend, and sometimes that's the case. And budget always isn't that one galvanizing issue or burning platform.
You might think it is, but it's not.
Director Tunakaitis would think it is.
Yeah, well,
No doubt about it. Thank you, Councillor Pachariva. One question from my standpoint to Corporate Communications. On slide 13, you referenced a question that to me was unanswered, where you said, if you were given the option, would you be willing to contribute an extra $50 to help enhance a program or service that is especially meaningful to you? And it shows answered 73%, but doesn't indicate whether they said yes or no. Just curious on what the outcome of that was.
Okay, through you, Chair, to you, Chair. It does mean yes. So those who answered it, maybe the way we worded it here isn't exactly how it was worded in the survey, but what we said was, if you're willing to contribute, then please go ahead and tell us which ones. So if they'd skipped it, that means they were not willing to contribute.
Thank you for the clarification.
You're
I was just, again, I read that through, I'm like, I just want to know what that,
It is yes
what the
and no.
tally was.
It is absolutely yes and no.
All right,
Yes.
perfect. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for the clarification. And I believe our Q&A on that portion is now complete, so we are going to move over to the capital budget overview with spending. I believe Director Tunakaitis is coming back up.
Thank
Go right
you,
ahead.
Chair. And through you, it was nice to have a little break there. And I do want to acknowledge and thank the communications team and the manager of corporate communications just for all the work that we do together on that and for all of the support. So just wanted to say that from the finance side. So here we are. Here we are with our 2026 capital budget. This slide shows you an overview of the spending that's proposed for next year. It's a total spend of $5.35 million. You can see that 53% of it is for transportation, 35% is for environment and safety, 9% for corporate infrastructure, and 3% for social infrastructure. This next slide is an overview of the funding sources for that budget. So the funding sources equal the spending, and you can see 38% is grants and miscellaneous other revenues, 26% from the Infrastructure Reserve Fund, 16% from development charges, 12% from the Sanitary Sewer Reserve Fund, and 8% from the Water Reserve Fund. So that gives you the overview. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Public Works, who's going to talk about the capital renewal programs. There you go.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair and members of council. I'd like to go over a few slides as it pertains to our capital renewal programs. So the town has a number of capital renewal programs which require a budget each year for the maintenance and rehabilitation of our infrastructure. These programs are essential in delivering very important services to our residents across the community, ensuring that they're safe and healthy, and there's a number of programs I'm going to go over here. So the first one, road and right-of-way programs, so these would focus on our transportation services. The largest one being our road resurfacing and rehabilitation program, focusing on roads. We have the roadside safety program, another very important program where we look at investing in traffic calming improvements, speed reduction, our guide rail protection programs like that. We have sidewalk repair program, sidewalk investments. So again, a very important program in making sure we're providing connectivity for pedestrians, promoting active transportation in the community. And we have bridge and culvert programs. We have a lot of bridges and culverts to maintain. So for 2026, the total budget for the road and right-of-way programs is proposed at $2.13 million. So this slide's, we're going to talk a little bit about the roads program. So the town has invested heavily into its road network over the last several years, made a lot of good investments. I'm going to talk about the Pavement Condition Index, or PCI, which is a rating number 0 to 100, and it's used to assess the condition of road surfaces. There's a little chart in the bottom of the slide there that kind of lays out all the various categories of this PCI range, ranging from very good down to failed. Essentially, the higher the number means the better condition the road is in. So the town's current average network-wide rating, so an average of all of our entire roads averaged together, is estimated to be in an upper range of the fair condition category with a PCI value of approximately 68. So we're kind of right at the bottom of the good category into the fair category and again, that's an estimate that we're providing on our current overall rating. The proposed short-term financial strategy in this budget that is before you is to reduce the funding of the roads program. We're looking at a $1.75 million investment next year versus $2.2 million that we have this year, just for comparison. And we need to do this while we build the contribution to the capital reserves to help reduce the infrastructure gap. So we wanted to take a look at that reduced funding level and look at, what does that do to the condition of our roads. So we use performance modeling to help guide us with our decision-making on budgets, different scenarios for our road system. And it predicts the average PCI level of service for the road network will drop to around a 65 rating So being in the fair condition rating. So we did check that, and we're looking at that level of service rating of a 65. And again, as I mentioned, we're looking at a $1.75 million budget proposed for next year. This slide here, so we want to kind of share a little bit information graphically from the performance modeling that we did. So the graph on the right-hand side there. So what we're kind of graphing is we have the average PCI. So this is the average PCI is the average of all your road network. So it's giving you an average of your entire road network over time. So the red, when we look at the graph, red line is basically if the town doesn't do anything, doesn't invest in anything, which you can see the road condition or the PCIs, really deteriorate over time. We obviously don't want to do that. The yellow line on the graph in the middle represents the forecast PCI with an annual budget of $1.75 million each year, which would result in an overall decline in condition over time. And again, we don't want to recommend that either. We don't want to see our road system decline or the condition of our road system. The black line illustrates the forecast PCI if the town incrementally increases the annual funding each year to maintain a fair condition. And that's what staff's recommending through the budget process. So the proposed budget for 2026, we're looking at $1.75 million, but we want to see that incrementally increase each year thereafter. We're, again, trying to also balance contributing to our infrastructure reserve. So we're looking at about a $250,000 to $300,000 a year increase that we want to continue to do on the roads program. So the gap between the yellow and the black line on the graph there increases over time, which demonstrates, there's a cost to close that gap, and it becomes much more expensive over time. If the funding level of $1.75 million is maintained each year, which again is that yellow line, and you can see kind of the road conditions declining over time. We just used an example, that little circle on the graph. So say in 2031, if we just continue to invest the $1.75 million each year, that gap is actually going to cost $4 million to bring the road conditions back up to what we're recommending moving forward with next year. So just wanted to kind of highlight that gap is very expensive if we leave that over time. So instead, staff recommend that the funding be incrementally increased each year and that the PCI is maintained in a fair condition for our level of service without significant decline, and that the costs are smoothed over the 10-year horizon and the town's road assets are preserved. So we feel this is a responsible plan. It balances both our service levels in terms of our road conditions and as well financial sustainability. So moving over to our fleet replacement program, just a little information. The town has almost $10 million in fleet and equipment. So it's a large asset that we have to maintain. Our asset management plan that we brought to council back in the summer had suggested that, we should be spending probably $750,000 when you have that value of a fleet with your full life cycle recovery. So just to kind of give you an idea on the magnitude of our fleet asset. Fleet is very important. We use it on a daily basis to provide all the important services to our residents in Lincoln. Vehicles are recommended for replacement when the maintenance costs start to outweigh the value of the actual asset, ensuring that we're making good investments and not, pouring money into a piece of equipment or a vehicle that isn't worth anything. The budget for 2026 is $110,000 that we're proposing. It's for a cargo van that's used in environmental services and is paid for by water and sanitary sewer reserves as outlined in the water and wastewater financial plan. And there's no property tax impact with this particular fleet that we're requesting. And just to highlight as well, some light-duty vehicles which do not require sort of more customized outfitting for our purposes will be leased in the budget as per that report that we brought to council a couple months ago, talking about that option. So our water and wastewater capital renewal programs, we have our water main replacement program, infill and infiltration, focusing on our sanitary sewer system, technology and optimization programs, so a number of programs. And for 2026, our water and wastewater programs are totaling $1.2 million. And with that, I'll turn it back over to our Director of Finance. Thanks.
Thanks, Director Graham. Director Tunakaitis?
Thank you. And the Director of Public Works and the Deputy Treasurer and I will all be here for questions about these projects after this portion of the presentation. So in a minute, I'm going to invite the Deputy Treasurer to come and do a walkthrough of each area of the capital budget and some of the project highlights. But I wanted to give a reminder on this slide. So when staff were directed about the 2026 budget by the mayor, we were still instructed to take council's priorities into account. And so we continued that process that we have been doing for a few years now. So these were the priorities that council directed us to prioritize projects on, with the top two being the highest priority. So first of all, health and safety. Second, legislated, mandated, and legal obligations. And third, strategic growth-related investment. 4, council priorities and the overall healthy community lens. And 5, grant opportunities and partnerships. So we've continued that process. It's the same type of prioritization and remapping that we've been doing for some time. And so I just wanted to provide a reminder of that. And with that, I will turn it over to the Deputy Treasurer, through you, Chair, to come and give us some of the highlights.
Okay, good evening. So the town's capital budget is broken out by service area, and we will start with corporate infrastructure. So corporate infrastructure includes buildings, transit fleet, technology equipment, and signage. So there are 3 projects this year, one being the cargo van that was discussed a couple minutes ago, a fire vehicle, a replacement of the command car, which we'll discuss in a moment, and the 2026 IT equipment program. So we'll highlight the replacement of the fire command car, which was originally purchased in 2016. The car is currently used for emergency response, incident command, and fire department admin duties on a 24/7 basis. So reliable fire vehicles are necessary to ensure a high level of public safety, reduce risk to the community, and enable the municipality to comply with its legislated obligations. And to put this in perspective, if this vehicle was ordered in 2026, it is anticipated that the new vehicle would not be ready until 2027 or possibly 2028, which would mean the existing vehicle would be nearly 12 years old by that time, which would be 5 years beyond its recommended replacement schedule. The current budget for this vehicle is $113,000, and it is funded by the IRF. So the next area is, we have a duplicate. So the next area is the environmental and safety infrastructure, which includes water, wastewater infrastructure, and fire emergency equipment. Within this, we have the 2026 fire emergency equipment, I&I reduction program that was discussed previously, water meter replacements, and the Vine Haven booster pump station system rehabilitation. The next area is social infrastructure, which includes recreation facilities, cemeteries, and parks. The budget includes $80,000 for sports field upgrades to the Jordan Field 3 lighting and arena work, general repairs and maintenance. And the last area is the transportation infrastructure, which includes roads, bridges and culverts, traffic calming and control. And a number of these programs were discussed earlier in the presentation. We have the 30 road reconstruction from King Street to South Limit, which will be discussed in a moment. The 2026 Rights of Way, Bridges and Culverts Program, 2026 Road Rehab and Resurfacing Program, which were discussed previously, along with the 2026 Roadside Safety Program. The Balls Falls Bridge number 50 study and preliminary design will also be discussed in a moment. So the 30 road reconstruction is a joint initiative between the Town of Lincoln and the Niagara region. So coordinating with the region ensures that local infrastructure upgrades are completed efficiently, cost-effectively, and in full alignment with regional improvements, minimizing disruption and extending the useful life of the entire corridor. So integrating the town's storm sewer work into the region's project ensures that all underground systems are designed in construction to modern standards, improving drainage capacity, stormwater management, and long-term reliability. So the budget for 2026 is $310,000, which will be added to the previously approved budget of $500,000 for a total of $810,000, funded 10% by development charges and 90% by the IRF. And Balls Falls Bridge number 50 is located over 20 Mile Creek on 6th Avenue in Vineland, which has reached the end of its useful service life and requires replacement within the next 5 years. So within the 2026 budget, there is the study for the completion of a Schedule B municipal class environmental assessment and a preliminary 30% design study. The preliminary design will establish accurate cost estimates, define permitting requirements, and position the town for detailed design, funding applications, and future construction. So this bridge is a vital component of Lincoln's local road network and its tourism economy, as it is situated within Balls Falls Conservation Area. It's an important connector for residents, visitors, and active transportation users. The 2024 biennial bridge inspection recommended replacement within the next 1 to 5 years because the structure was in poor condition. So the study requested in the 2026 budget will include archaeological, cultural heritage, and ecological assessments to ensure the replacement design preserves the area's character, minimizes environmental impact, and aligns with the town's environmental stewardship commitments. So the budget requested is $400,000, of which 12.5% is funded by development charges, 87.5% is funded by the Canadian Community Benefit Grant. And finally, the summary of the capital budget for 2026, with total expenditures of $5.3 million and funding from development charges of $858,000, from the Infrastructure Reserve Fund of $1.3 million, other reserve funds of $1 million, grants $2 million. That's the end of the capital budget summary. Sorry.
Thank you, Kate. You have to go to the next slide where it says questions and answers. There you go. Thank you so much. We do have a bunch of questions coming in. I just want to remind council that if you are asking questions about a specific project, please reference the page number in your binder with the project number so that we are all looking at the same information. So I am, Director Tunakaitis, you ready to go for the Q&A?
Yes, thank you through you, Chair. I did just want to highlight on that capital summary page that there is no proposed new debt for this year, because I just thought that was worth highlighting for you as well, not just what's there, but what's not there. So this year we have kind of looked at those projects, and this is what we're proposing, all from reserves and grants for this year.
Thank you very much. And we have Councillor Murray up first. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you very much. And Charlotte, I recognize the challenge that it must have been for your team and the rest of the teams that are building budgets to to stay within that, but I do appreciate the fact that there is no more long-term budget, no long-term borrowing incorporated into this budget, recognizing how difficult and challenging that was to achieve. So thank you for that. I wanted to talk to Mr. Graham briefly about the road rehab, and that's page 187 of our binders, slide number 20 on the presentation that we were looking at. I'm just going to go to that slide for a second so that I remember what I wanted to ask you. So, Dave, I know that it also must have been a little painful for you to allow your roads to be in the fair category. I know that you get a lot of complaints about them, and you've got a lot of challenges around that. But I also recognize that something we've been talking about since I've been on council is the idea that, I believe when I started, the roads were sitting at around 72, and the conversations has been, how much money can we save if we bring that down just a little bit? So I very much appreciate that we are doing that, and I wanted to know what the impact has been. I know that, again, you're the one who's going to be hearing from, or is hearing from people saying, this road is not okay. I do know that, the general public probably doesn't understand real carefully or real well the difference between 72 and 68 and 65, which is what we're going to be looking at for the year coming up. So if I could just get a little bit of feedback from you as to what you've seen in the gap from 72 to 68, so that we can get an understanding of what 65 will probably look like.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, it's a great question. The difference, so basically that condition number, that rating is really representing how bad is the road surface, right? So the difference between a 70 and a 65, so you're gonna, a road that's 65, you're gonna feel a little more cracks on it. It's gonna be a little rougher for the cars compared to one that's 70. So, so there's, it's hard to kind of quantify that, but it's really, that's how it's measured. It's surface distresses, so it'll be rougher, bumpier, maybe more patches. I think, and maybe some context, because I know it's a number too, and it's, 65. I think one thing I'd like to say about that number is we want to make sure we stay in that 65 range. There's a graph in your book, near the, I can't remember what page it is, but it kind of shows the rate of deterioration on roads. So we were deliberate with making sure that we stay at that 65 level, because when a road starts getting close to a 60, so if it's rated as a 60 PCI or even low 50s, that's at a point where that road now is deteriorating, kind of going from a fair to a poor condition. And that's not a good thing for the town in terms of how we're trying to be very, mindful and smart about investing in our roads, because then you lose that window of, hey, I could have resurfaced that road or resealed it at a fairly reasonable price and extended its life another 20 years. Because if it's, in that, approaching that poor range, like the 60 number or 55, then you're into much more costly work. You can't just resurface it. So what we want to do, we're sort of trying to balance this whole program with recognizing how important it is to, invest in our reserves, be financially sustainable. We don't want to lose control of our road conditions overall, right? So that's kind of that. I just wanted to kind of give you some rationale on that 65 number and the importance of not letting it go down to the 60, below 60, because it's going to cost a lot more money for the town to bring the roads back up. But to your earlier question, I think probably the message to the public is, some roads might be a little more, not as rough, a little more rough, not as smooth as some of the others. But again, this is referred to as an average. So we're talking about an average of our entire road network that's 300 kilometers. So you're still going to have some bad roads out there, and you're going to have some really good roads, right? So this is an average total network that we're talking about.
Fair enough. And I did want to compliment you on the comment that this is a responsible plan that balances service levels with financial sustainability, because I think that's what we're all trying to achieve. So I recognize that it was probably some challenging conversations to meet that, so well done. I also just, on that same page 187, I just wanted a little bit of clarity because it does say it's anticipated that the 2026 program may include. And I'm assuming, but I wanted to get just your confirmation on that, I'm assuming that it may or may not, depending on the cost, because I'm sure that as it goes out to tender, costs are going to change, things are going to come up. So can you just explain that may piece and what that might look like?
Through Mr. Chair to the councillor, yes, for sure. So what we try and do with our budget allocation for the roads program, we want to make sure we maximize that budget on roads. So we always have sort of we call it provisional roads or a B list. So when we go out for bidding, we bid the list of roads in the binder, but there's also some provisional roads that are listed here too, or B roads, and we see what kind of pricing we get. So if we get good pricing and we can afford to do those, we'll end up doing those roads as well.
Okay.
So with that.
That's great. And one last question, if I could. I'm not sure who's going to answer this one. I'm looking at, I'll give you a moment. I'm looking at slide number 37, but it's page number 188, and it's the Balls Falls Bridge. And I do understand that the budget we're looking at right here is just a study. It's not about replacing the bridge yet. It's just getting ready to eventually replace the bridge. And I do recognize that the study is going to be funded quite a bit by the Canadian, I don't know what the CCBF stands for, but Benefit Fund, Canadian, thank you.
Through you, Chair, it's the Canada Community Building Fund.
Excellent. So they're going to help cover quite a bit of the cost of the study, which is excellent. When we are ready, when the study is done, and now we're going to be ready to actually replace the bridge, one of the conversations is that it does go straight through the conservation area. It is our road, but it does go through the straight through there. Is there a possibility that when that road is replaced, that we get other stakeholders to help support us, the costs of that, like MPCA, are they involved in the cost of that, or is that strictly a town cost?
Through Mr. Chair to the councillor, a great question. So through the study process, the EA process, we will identify stakeholders to be part of the consultation. All the members of the public are part of that too, but you're absolutely right. Conservation Authority will be a major stakeholder. We do want to talk to them about this bridge, get their input on what it looks like. And yeah, maybe there's some opportunities for some cost sharing. All that will be talked about.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. And just a point of clarification on your first question for those that are following at home. Again, you mentioned that the 65 is an average. Do we also have a floor for which we will not let the roads drop below, just in case, again, those, if they do hit 50, 40, that it becomes like an immediate action point?
Through Mr. Chair, so yes, we do. So on there's, I don't have it right in front of me, but there's poor, very poor, and then there's fail. We never have any fail, right? So that would be like you got major safety issues. So we don't like our roads to get a lot, once they start getting into the poor, they're getting rough, and then very poor. That's the roads that we have to manage and make sure that are, appropriate. But in the low end of the poor, going into the failed, I think a PCI probably, approaching 20 would be a real problem.
Okay, thank you very much. And next we have Councillor Timmers. Go ahead, Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Chair. So most of my questions were just asked. I was going to ask about the bridge as well and the road program. But I do have a question just quickly around the 30 road. So previously, it was 500,000 was budgeted. Now this year, 310. And can you give me what's next? What's next year, and when will this actually? What's our portion compared to the region? I don't know if you can answer that, but that's a lot of money that we've already invested, and we're still sitting. I don't know what's coming next.
Through Mr. Chair to the councillor, so we previously got budget approval of $500,000, and that was to start detailed design of 30 Road. I mean, 30 Road is a very challenging road, it's an escarpment crossing. There's a lot of work that has to be done to that road. A lot of stability work along the side of the road, a lot of drainage improvements, road improvements. So it's not just a typical come in and pave the road. So we've invested in design work to get a plan put together on how we're going to upgrade 30 Road, geotechnical investigation, slope stability. So that's kind of what that $500,000 is for, is to prepare a detailed design plan so that we're ready for construction, shovel ready. The $300,000 budget before you this evening is to actually work with the Niagara region to put storm sewer pipes in the road, a little bit on 30 and in the King Street intersection. Just a reminder for everybody, the King Street is being reconstructed by the Region of Niagara. They just awarded their tender and they're going to be starting the work next year. A big part of that project is to redo the 30 Road King Street intersection. There's going to be stoplights put in there. And they're also, in the scope of the job, the King Street job goes from kind of the roundabout Green Lane all the way into Lincoln Avenue. So it's a major project for the community, very important. So what the budget before you tonight is as part of our future 30 Road reconstruction works, we're going to be doing storm drainage on 30 Road that we have to do. So these pipes are going to be for us to connect to in the future for our project. And that's why we want to do them now, because the region is upgrading and reconstructing their intersection. And we want to coordinate that with the region and put those pipes in now for the future, opposed to coming back, 5 years later and ripping up a new road to put pipes in for our project. So
No,
that's really
great.
the reason.
I appreciate your comments, and that intersection, can't wait for it to be done. So, just one other quick question through you, Chair. Back to the Balls Falls Bridge, Councillor Murray kind of covered some of the questions, but there's a price tag for 2030, $2,300,000. So we're a long way out to 2030. Like, how are we coming up with that as the final cost? Because it seems to me it's going to be a lot higher by the time we get to 2030.
Through Mr. Chair to the councillor, so the $2 million cost that's currently in the business case is what we would expect a bridge of that sort of same size, same look to cost. But really, the purpose of the EA study, we're going to go through a number of options. So it forces us to go through a number of options, because the Balls Falls location is quite unique. It's a narrow bridge. It's quaint, a lot of heritage features. So it is a challenge. What kind of bridge do we want to have back? Do we still want to have a narrow bridge to have sort of that character? Do we want to put in a wider bridge? There'll be all kinds of options. Do we even put a bridge back? So the EA requires you to go through a number of options. We cost them out, and then they're ranked, and then you have a preferred design scope of kind of what to move forward with based on a lot of inputs, all consultation, all that. So we'll have some design scope, and then we'll be able to say, okay, this is the decision for Balls Falls Bridge on what it's going to look like, and then we'll be able to have a really accurate cost coming out of the EA to then guide us forward towards the construction in 5 years.
Okay, I was just wondering, with that number already put there, how we came to that, but thank you very much for the comments. And best part, there's no new debt being taken on. That's all I want to hear, so thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Timmers. And next we have Councillor Brunet.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was actually going to come out of the queue because both of my projects were Balls Falls and 30 Road. But just in follow-up to the questions from Councillor Murray and Councillor Timmers, so to your point, Director, it's a very narrow bridge. We also have a very narrow bridge at, in Jordan, that goes over the creek there by the campground. So I'm sure there must be feedback coming in from fire and other people saying, this is kind of an area that we have concerns about, whether it's, extractions from the gorge, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So where are we in those discussions, and whereby this becomes a much bigger job and now it's a $5 million bridge instead of 2.3? And again, to Councillor, Murray's comments, NPCA, this is NPCA grounds, where's their skin in the game? So just looking at where this could be going.
Through Mr. Chair to the councillor, I mean, yeah, great question, because, as the EA progresses, cost is going to be one of the big factors that we manage through looking at the various options. I mean, the problem with the bridge right now for like fire services and even ourselves with large dump trucks, it has a weight restriction on it. So we can't go over it with large vehicles. So that'll be one of our objectives when we go through the EA processes, whether it's still narrow at the end, coming out of this, or we make it wider, it's going to have enough weight strength, capacity in its structure to carry emergency vehicles and large trucks. So that would be one of our mandates coming out of it. And yeah, the Conservation Authority is going to be a major stakeholder. We haven't had discussions with them yet, and once we get budget and start this process, we'll be sitting down with them and engaging with them. And yeah, maybe there's an opportunity to partner with them through this, and we'll definitely be looking at all those opportunities.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, I appreciate the comments there. And going back to 30 Road, Director Graham, I mean, you've been at our ward meetings, you've been at the regional ward meetings, at the Legion, you've been at our most recent, we've got residents on 30 Road that have been saying, what's going on, why, we were told this was going to be dealt with, now it's being pushed back, and that's all fine and dandy. But I think it's really important that we communicate exactly where this money is, why it's being spent. You've already articulated that, but I think it's very important, that, the people that are looking at what we're doing, they're saying, okay, you put 500,000 in, now you're putting another 310. Well, this really isn't, in essence, it's not really for the work that's going to come, the major work going up to Ridge Road. It's to accommodate the regional work that's going to be happening at the intersection. And I think it's important that communication is clearly so people understand, why this money's being put in this year's budget. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bernay. Councillor Pachariva.
Thank you, Chair Russell. And through you to Mr. Graham. Now, I don't, Dave, I've got a question about the infrastructure reduction, right? So first off, just because I want to get a sense, and you said, like, Councillor Murray asked the question, what's the difference between 72 and 65? Now, I want to use a real-life example. I don't mean to pick on the region, but I'm going to use the North Service Road. So between Ontario Street and Tufford Road, cracks, like it's bang, 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 bang. What would that rate at? Up top of your head, because you're, right, as opposed to from Tufford Road to Victoria, smooth. Just to ballpark it so I have a sense, and maybe people that drive that then have a feeling of what that's like. Because like 62, 75, it's all arbitrary. Like a real-life example, hey, this is a road that's 50. Just if you can, and I hate to put you on the spot like that, but
he's gonna. A range.
And I apologize, David, for doing this and not giving you a heads up.
A range would be more than acceptable with a little context provided if it's possible. If not, we can always have
you can come back. You can come, just curious, George.
So through you, Mr. Chair, and Councillor, I totally understand where you're coming from, trying to get some examples. So I actually do have, for next year's road program, I do have some PCIs that I could share, just to kind of give you a feel. I don't know if you've driven any of these roads, because I think that would be helpful. So John Street, very poor condition, from Victoria Avenue heading towards Beamsville. It's designated as a very poor road. So the PCI on that would be 31.
Oh.
So just give you a feel for how bad that road is, it would equal a 31. So in comparison, I don't know what other roads you drive, but Tufford Road is in our roads program for next year, between King Street and John Street, and that's considered kind of one of our, better roads that we want to preserve, right? We want to seal it next year. It has a PCI of 71.
Okay.
Just for example, another road in our program next year, 23rd Street, between 8th Avenue and Glen Road. That has a PCI of 71 as well. So that would give you a feel.
Okay. Yeah, no, Grant, thank you very much for that. And so a follow-up to that is, so the reduction in $450,000 this year compared to previous years isn't going to cause the road network to deteriorate that much, because the slide 21 shows it virtually, why isn't that working? There we go, 21. Shows it virtually the same, correct?
Through Mr. Chair to the councillor, yeah, I think the main message I think we want to get across is over time, longer term,
Yeah.
it really falls,
Yeah,
right?
it falls,
So-
it falls off, yeah,
Yes.
if you let it go for too long.
That's right.
So having said that, and again, I looking forward on how we want to add 250 to 300,000 to that to get it up to 3.2 million, because, we used to spend 600,000 on roads, right? And we were like Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill, right? So now we've got to a point of stability. At a future meeting, would you be able to provide a graph that then shows how the PCI goes up with that additional spend? Is that something that we could extrapolate?
So through you, Chair, to the counselor, in the slide presentation, that graph, I'm not sure what slide number it is, I don't quite have enough room here. The slide that's in there, the black line at the top where we put that circle, that's based on putting an increase in each year. So that top line, what the Director of Public Works and myself are recommending, is to increase the contribution by 250 to 300,000 per year, and that's what will keep it at that level. If we kept it at the 1.75 million, it's the yellow line in the middle. So the yellow line is keeping the contribution the same. The black line is by incrementally increasing it.
But it doesn't show much, doesn't show the PCI actually really moving.
Through Mr. Chair, it would be to maintain the PCI. We need to invest that incrementally on an annual basis to maintain the PCI.
Right, okay. We'll talk afterwards about that, okay. Question number 2, if I may, Councilor Russell.
I think that was 2 plus a.
Well, no, it was a
some Greek
follow-up, it was
mythology
a follow-up,
thrown in
well, I do like the yes. And again, so slide 24, and this is another one near and dear to my heart, water, wastewater. So, and I didn't see it, and maybe I missed it, and if I did, I'm sorry, but we've replaced all the cast iron, right, in our system, and we're now addressing the cement line that exists. Do we have that number that you used to provide every year, and I love that number, that shows, as we make these investments, how that cement line cast iron goes down? Is that, again, like at a next meeting, is that something you could give us?
Through Mr. Chair, to the councillor, I don't have it handy on me, but we
Yeah.
definitely can get it back. But
Okay.
yeah, for sure. Council's made a lot of investment. We don't have any cast iron pipe on the
No.
inside of the pipe
Yep.
anymore. Those are all gone.
Yep.
We still have some cast iron lined cement line pipe.
Yeah. Which we're
But-
tackling now.
Yep, we're
Okay.
working away at those. And we have some ductile iron pipe as well,
Right.
but our metallic pipe is decreasing, which is good.
And third one, Chair?
Yeah, you're at 3 plus. We're gonna put you at the end of the line here.
Okay, it is a topic. It's, okay, I was having questions within my
Is it
topics.
related to the water
Project.
wastewater?
No, it's related to Balls Falls Bridge.
Okay, we'll come back. You can come back
I can
in
come
at
back,
the end
okay.
if you'd be obliged. Councilor Mikulik, please go ahead.
Through you to Director Dave and Charlotte. So I'm gonna hit that Balls Falls Bridge too. I don't think we've beat that down enough. But we talk about 400 grand for an EA, and I'm struggling with this. This doesn't even buy a bag of cement. And is there any way to tender a project like this with the effort, reducing red tape and letting private enterprise tender the EA itself, the design itself, and the construction, and snowball that into one whole ball of wax? Is this such a thing that's possible? I don't know from a public works perspective.
Through Mr. Chair to the councillor, so for design build, so that could be an option. So the purpose of the EA is to basically come up with a scope of, what are we going to do? What type of bridge, what kind of bridge are we putting back? What's it going to look like? So we first kind of have to figure out what that looks like through the EA process with all the studies, the consultation, the stakeholder engagement. Then once we have a preferred alternative that's referred to, then you can go to detailed design, and that's where you could consider, do I want to do a design build? Because then the proponent would have something to work with.
Yeah. I just struggle with the 400,000 not even buying a bag of cement. That I have a hard time with, but I'm not, that's why you do what you do. And part two to that question, if I may, we're talking about replacing possibly the Bailey Bridge down by the campground also. Is there any way to do an EA study that encompasses both bridges at the same time? I just ask that because it's the same creek, it's the same fish, it's the same frogs and everything else, same heritage, same sort of thing, and the same similar bridges in design. Can we look at perhaps doing that? Combining two EAs, providing two EAs within one, if we have to go that route? Or has that been considered?
Through Mr. Chair, I guess you probably could consider that. It would cost a lot more money because we're now adding a whole other bridge to the process. And the EA process, it does look at the localized location of the future works, the project. So even though they're bridges, they are kind of far apart, different locations. So I'm not saying it couldn't be done, it's just it would cost a lot more money than 400,000. But
Absolutely.
I understand what you're.
But if it costs 500 for two instead of 800 for one, or if instead of 800, that's why I kind of make that suggestion. But again, I'm not sure what's been kicked around the back room. So as far as ideas or ways to combine that sort of thing, that's something I bring up.
Just wait, Councilor Michael, I think we have a solution?
Through
Or
you,
comment?
through you, Chair, to the councillor, is it okay if we take that away?
Sure, yeah,
and
absolutely.
we'll try to come back to the next meeting for
For sure.
something with you on that. It's just not something I can answer
Absolutely.
on the spot. Thank you.
Another question I have through you. It's going to be about the fire, the fire vehicle that on page 231, that fire command vehicle, and from a purchasing, we've purchased a vehicle very similar to this a couple of years ago, I believe, and that particular vehicle we financed, took a debenture. This particular vehicle, we're using the infrastructure reserve fund. Why didn't we use the infrastructure reserve fund at that time, and why are we doing that now?
Through you, Chair, to the councillor, it's the same theme we've been talking about throughout, which is just prioritization. So at that time, we had other demands and priorities that we needed to place on the infrastructure reserve fund. I'd have to double check which vehicle you're talking about. I do need to do an update for council because at the end of last year, we had some savings on debt payments, which I put in my final year-end report that we would use for debenture substitution. So I'm actually trying to apply that to those fire vehicles as opposed to the debt. So we're actually trying to reduce the debt that we're taking out for vehicles. But I'll give you an update on that when we finish out the year and I've determined what funding is possible. So we're trying to find alternatives to debt funding for vehicles where we can, if
Okay.
that answers your question.
And then, along that line with that fire vehicle, what happens with the old one? Like, what happens with this one? It says that it's experiencing transmission problems, having intermittent electrical faults, tires are worn. Are we gonna be doing all those repairs anyway? And if so, why wouldn't we just keep the truck?
Through you, Chair, if I can turn that over to the fire chief, I believe I know the answer to that question, but I'll let him respond.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair. We will keep it going, just try to keep it running until we can get the replacement, but after we get the replacement, we will dispose of it at auction like we do most of the fleet. Yeah, we just sold a pump this week, one of the old surplus pumps, so it'll be declared surplus and disposed of.
Okay, perfect. I'll jump back in later. I think I'm good for now.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Mikulik. Councillor Rajama.
Thank you, Chair Russell. My question is about project number 202633 on page 188, and it's the roadside safety program. I'm glad to see, of course, that there are proposed permanent speed bumps on Cedar Brook and Drake Avenue and Connor Drive. My question is, what goes into the final decision to establish those? And, well, that's my first question. The question is, if you were to break out, I'm curious, if you were to break out the cost of those permanent speed humps out of that 90,000, what would it be? And again, mostly curious, because I'm aware of the conversations that have gone on over the years about speeding on both those roads, and I do support them. But again, I'm curious about each of those streets, particularly Cedar Brook Avenue and Drake Avenue. What have we heard? And what does it cost to install those out of the 90,000?
Through Mr. Chair to the councillor, so the locations are derived kind of from the temporary speed humps. So the way the program works is when we have a request for speed humps and warrant the speed humps with speed studies and following our traffic calming policy, we place temporary ones out on the street based on feedback, what we've seen, and usually the temporary speed humps are on a street for at least a couple years, maybe 3 years. And every year, we do get feedback from residents, so we send them out a survey and ask them, did you find the speed humps effective? And we get comments in terms of maybe adjusting their locations, et cetera. So through the temporary process, that basically derives the final location, so then that we feel comfortable investing in the more permanent ones.
Okay, thank you. And so who does the survey go to? Where does that list get compiled?
Through Mr. Chair, so it would be the neighborhood, so people along the street living in the area. And we also, I know with our webpage, our website, we also promote and talk about where we're doing speed humps, temporary speed humps, and a lot of times we will get feedback, not always from the survey, like we'll get the survey results, but a lot of times people will just contact us about what they think about the speed humps on a particular street, so obviously we use that as well. And to your other question around the speed hump costs, so for next year, I think that's going to probably be most of that money. Depending on how many we put out for tender, they can vary around $7,000 a location. But again, it really depends on how many that we're putting out for tender and the, sort of the locations that they're going to go. Some locations may be a little more costly to install than others, but just generally speaking, it's around $7,000.
Okay, so $7,000 per speed hump out of $90,000 budget for the roadside safety program. So $21,000, something like that between the three. Okay, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, I have a question about IT. When would I ask that question? And,
Was that your third question?
no.
Well, when you asked the question?
Yes, no. Tricky one. No.
Steve's back here. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Steve. So, on page 147 of our binder, where the chart shows asset categories under the corporate asset management plan, it says that our IT is currently in fair condition at 46%, with the projected average condition is 74%, and the funding required is 0.47 million. So with that investment will be good. Our IT totally will be in good shape. So my question is about cybersecurity, and I know there's only so much we can say when it comes to security publicly, because security information is secure by nature. But are we comfortable? I mean, I'd like to see, to what extent, what percentage, I guess, of that, of everything that we lump into the IT category is applicable to cybersecurity? And are we comfortable that we've invested enough in cybersecurity to be, if you could break it out, would you say it's very good? Because that's where I'd like to see our cybersecurity is very good.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to the councillor. Our cybersecurity is good. We've actually recently made a fairly significant investment in it that I can't quite get into here, obviously for security reasons. That's coming out of our operating budget versus capital. So that's being handled that way. And as far as our overall security goes, yes, we are secure.
Yeah, just want to make sure that we're very careful in characterization of our security protocols and the level of investment where we are in open session.
I agree. So I'm not asking for detail, but I do want to know that, I do want to feel comfortable. If you want to get into detail, then we would have to go into closed session, obviously. But I am comforted hearing that IT feels very strongly that we're in a good position when it comes to cybersecurity.
Yes, we are in a good position.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gemma. Councillor Pachariva, back in the loop. Looking forward to the next Greek mythology example as well.
Thank you, Chair Russell. Okay, Falls Falls Bridge, slide 37 and 38. Dave, I thought that, because I've been around for a while, I thought we replaced that bridge or did some work on it when we rebuilt 6th Avenue. Or am I remiss? So we did 6th Avenue from Victoria over to Glen. Did we not do the bridge?
Through Mr. Chair to the councillor, so just a little bit of background. So, so the bridge was built in 1919. That's when it was constructed.
Okay.
And then there was a rehabilitation about 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we did some welding
Okay.
to buy more time on the
Okay.
bridge to extend its life a bit. So
Okay,
that's
so-
why.
So much like we did with the Bailey Bridge.
Yeah, so that's why we're kind of
Okay.
at the point now where we've done rehabilitation in the past and we've got to replace it.
Okay, terrific, terrific. Thank you very much. And I had to take a little bathroom break, but I think I heard Councillor Michalak as I was going out the door asking about two bridges. And what was I correct? Is the Bailey?
Coupling the EA between the two.
Oh, coupling the EA. Okay, because I got to remind us that we had two bridges, pedestrian bridges, that we had a better price on two, and council voted it down. So I just, want to remind you of what happened in the past. So if you're going to do that, don't waste staff's time. Follow-up to the Balls Falls. Dave, knowing too, and Councilor Bernay went down this road about how it's a narrow bridge and everything like that. When we finally get there, we're going to have commenting agencies like Age Friendly and Active Transportation, because they took a vital role in the Jordan Hollow Bridge, right? And actually reached out and said, hey, we should make it wider, we should have the active transportation, the cycling thing. So hoping that there'll be a commenting group on it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely, because when we do an EA process like this, we don't have a choice, right? So
Okay.
there's going to be tons of consultation.
Okay, terrific. And again, I heard Councillor Mikulik going down this avenue, and alternative methods about doing the bridge, like how, and when we get to that, like the business case of a fiberglass bridge replacement where they come in and they do the abutments ahead of time, so you don't have to close the road for months on end and tie up money and flag people and this and that. That'll all be in a business case. So I heard you going down that, so I'm happy to hear that. So thank you very much. Just my other question has to do with, and Councilor Renchma got onto it, with the permanent speed humps. And again, very supportive of this. Whereabouts are they going to go on Connor Drive? Because we already have the one there to access Prokich Park. It's raised. So wondering, because I didn't see a map that shows the installation of where those might be. We had issues, Councilor Bernay and I both came across this at, when we were campaigning from Mountain Street over to Cassandra, and then from Cassandra up to the curve. Now we've got one on the curve and then one coming out the other end. So are there going to be multiple ones on that street, or how are we going to address that?
Through Mr. Chair to the councillor, so I believe they're going to be closer towards the Mountain Street direction.
Okay.
Where you've seen the temporary ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Patriva. Councillor Mikulik, back in a second time.
Thank you very much. Just, I'm gonna look at those water meters. We're replacing, I don't know how many water meters, but we're spending $300,000 on water meters. I thought we replaced them all 2020. Spend almost $2.5 million or something around there in 2020.
Page number.
It was in the presentation, so it was in the.
Through you, Chair, to the counselor, I can answer that one fairly easily.
202582, or page 31 on the.
Go to right, Director Tunakaitis.
So, through you, Chair, this was a recommendation as part of our water and wastewater financial plan. So when we reviewed this with the consultants, and we looked at what is required over time, their recommendation was that we put in an annual amount. Anything that we don't spend goes into a reserve specifically for water meters, because similar to that situation that you were saying, sometimes it's a large lump sum at one point in time. So their recommendation was that we put away for it each year. And then that way, when there's a year where there's a lot, we'll have it there. If there's not as many, it goes into the water meter replacement reserve, and we have that available for a future date when it is a larger amount.
Okay.
So it's not a specific, it's not that we specifically need 300,000 that we know of next year. It's that their recommendation is that we put aside 300,000 per year.
Okay.
We use that as needed because we do have some replacements every year, and anything that's unused, we put away just solely for that purpose in the future.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And one more question through you. With public safety and that piece, that was, Councillor Renjema touched upon it. Is there any concerns, I read the paper and I watch the news, there's no more photo radar. Is there any concerns? Do we rely on revenue from photo radar to fund this sort of thing? And is there any impact to our budget that might have changed in the last week or two? Did I just ask 3 questions, Councillor Russell?
Through you, Chair, to the counselor, I am happy to say that the way that we budgeted for it was the first year we received it, we put it into a reserve. So there is going to be a budget impact eventually, but not next year, and it's something we're able to smooth out by using what we've put into that reserve towards that program, and then just kind of gradually letting it taper off if there is a budget impact.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mikulik. And Vice Chair Reimer, come on in.
Thank you, Chair Russell. A couple of quick questions. One of clarification, I just wanted to pick up on a question that was asked by Councilor Murray regarding the job number 202639, Balls Falls Bridge, and regarding stakeholders and other interested parties. Is that bridge on our property, like on the town right-of-way? Or is the road allowance, like the road allowance, you know, how sometimes they're adjusted, something, because of the way that jogs, are we actually on NPCA land? I know, I'm just, you don't have to answer that, Dave, but that jogged my memory, because years ago, there was some road realignment, and the only reason I say that is an EA might be better on our property, and maybe it's a better location for it than where it is there right now. That's all.
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, it's a great question. There is a narrow road allowance up there, but through this process, we will be able to, look at the legal property survey as we do the EA study and really confirm where property lines are, confirm all that. So, but it is a narrow spot up there. You're absolutely right. So it'll be reviewed further for sure.
Good. Okay, thank you. And one other question, if I may, Chair Russell. Sorry, I don't have the page number. Another one for Director Graham. Job number 202638. That's the Vinehaven Booster Pump Station. I realize this is the water, David, but is this off a regional main that we have to put this into Vinehaven, or is this our main coming off of King Street? Just like, is that our portion? Is the region kicking anything, or this is ours to bear solely?
Through Mr. Chair to the councillor, so this is off our main, so it's all ours.
Okay.
It's to basically boost pressure from
sure.
King Street up to the bench.
Just trying to get the region to kick in a little more, that's all.
No, sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Graham. Thank you, Director Graham. Thank you, Chair Russell.
Thank you, Vice Chair Reimer. Any more questions or comments on capital? Nope, seeing none. Thank you to staff for that presentation. We are going to take a 5-minute bio break, so let's come back at, on my laptop, 7:15 p.m. All right, and we are back. Thanks, everybody, for indulging our small break. We are now going back to Director Tunakaitis for part 2 of this exciting budget conversation. Director Tunakaitis, over to you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm so happy someone sees my presentations as exciting. So next up, the topic we want to discuss is asset management and the infrastructure gap. So in 2025, the town completed an update of its asset management plans for all service areas, which were consolidated into a corporate asset management plan, the CAMP. With Council's approval of the 2025 CAMP, the town has met all of the requirements of Ontario Regulation 588-17 to date. The CAMP provides a snapshot of the state of the town's asset portfolio, a description of the condition of the town's assets, the recommended life cycle activities and expected service levels of service, a recommended financial strategy to ensure continued asset performance. The current replacement value of the town's assets is approximately $1.56 billion, with 89% of those assets assessed with fair or better condition. So the good news there is we have been investing in our capital infrastructure. That's what we want to do. We want to keep it in a good condition. We want to have it where it's not very expensive to rehabilitate down the road, and we've been doing so. I will note for you that this graph below, it shows the current replacement value of the different types of the town's assets, but it does exclude the former BDSS site, which has not been incorporated into the CAMP pending community consultation and a future decision by council concerning the long-term plan for the site. So, I mean, you can see right here, our largest replacement value assets are our water network. And then roads, storm, and sanitary sewer. So when people think about what their rates are paying for when they're using their water, when they're using their sanitary sewer, it's going towards maintaining and keeping all of these assets in a good condition to provide them with clean and healthy water. Lincoln, like most municipalities, has an infrastructure gap. And our asset management plan highlights the importance of investing our assets at the right time to maximize the tax dollar. So I would say that what Director Graham was talking about the road rehabilitation program, that's really what we were looking at between Public Works and Finance as part of that process, is we want to make sure we're investing enough in the roads that they don't get to the point where it's really expensive in order to bring them back up to the level that we want. So this shows an overview that over time, our assets are going to cost us, on average, $26.3 million per year in order to maintain and replace. And currently, what we have available is $8.66 million per year, so the total annual deficit, or the infrastructure gap, is $17.6 million per year. Now, as a reminder, we've looked at this slide before. These are some of the headlines from municipalities across the province and across the country. We are all experiencing an infrastructure gap. This is not unique to the town of Lincoln. I would say to you that I think the reason the province, in part at least, brought forward that asset management regulation and asked municipalities to go through that exercise is to ensure that we all really look at those assets and we have a plan in place in order to fund them. So I wanted to take a minute and talk about what has been happening with inflation. Some people that I hear from, they email me as the treasurer, they would like property tax increases to be equal to the increases in the consumer price index. It's a very common request. The consumer price index is based on the price of a typical basket of goods and services that are purchased by a household. So things like groceries, clothing, housing costs, their utility costs. And from 2019 to 2025, the consumer price index increased approximately 21%. Now that was from January to January. There's different ways you can calculate it from one month to another, but this is a good approximation. The types of goods and services purchased by a municipality are not the same as the types of goods and services that are purchased by a household. The town's purchases include items like road construction, water mains, fire trucks, and snowplows. So on the household side, you have groceries, clothing, utilities, and housing costs. On the municipal side, we have things like construction, fire trucks, snowplows, and fuel. The cost of items purchased by the town has increased at a faster rate than the cost of items purchased by a typical household. And so I'm going to go through some examples. Example 1 is a tandem truck with front and wing plow and sand salter. In 2019, that plow would cost $297,000. In 2025, it would cost $424,000. So that's an increase of 43%. And if we contrast that to a consumer inflation rate of 21%, if it had increased at the rate of consumer inflation, it would cost $358,800. So I think that's part of the challenge when we're trying to explain the reason for property tax increases, when we're trying to explain why the infrastructure gap has grown, is that the frame of reference of most households and most people is the 21% increase in costs that they've experienced, but that's not what we're experiencing as a municipality. I rearranged my examples, so this says example 3, but it's supposed to be example 2. I realized that when I was reviewing my presentation. But the next example is a pumper rescue truck. So the price of that pumper truck in 2019 was $631,000. The price in 2025 is $1.31 million. And that is with fewer rescue components and features. So that's an increase of 108%. And the reason I wanted to show the prices, because I think when we say things like 108%, that's really a difficult concept for a lot of people to comprehend. It sounds like maybe it's an 8% increase. 108 means it more than doubled during that time. So as a reminder, consumer inflation over that same time period was 21%. If the truck had increased at that rate, it would be $762,000. But it's 1.31 million. So that's part of what we've been faced with. That's part of what's causing that infrastructure gap to grow in a way that wasn't necessarily a result of something we did, it's a result of the situation that we're facing. Another example is a 5/8-inch water meter, which increased 33% over that time period, where consumer inflation was 21%. We also have fire bunker gear. For that period of time, it increased 100%, which means the price doubled. And as a reminder, in that same time period, consumer inflation was 21%. So we went through a list of items, quite a list of items, and then we've just summarized them here for you. But road resurfacing materials, sidewalks, and curbing, 29 to 49%. Hazard, speed, and stop signs, 25 to 95%. Extrication equipment, spreaders and cutters, 22 to 33%. Water mains, PVC pipes, and couplers, 26 to 65%. Software, 59 to 480%. So some software has almost quintupled in price during that time frame. And the construction price index was 50%, all while the consumer price index was 21%. So this is what we, not just Lincoln, this is what municipalities are contending with. It's a hard conversation to have with people. I know it's, we want to keep that affordability in mind, so we're always trying to balance those priorities, but this is the reality that we're faced with. So the increased inflation has widened the infrastructure gap, because now what those assets will cost us in order to maintain and replace is now a higher number than it was 5 or 6 years ago. This is affecting many municipalities, and we have limited sources of funding to offset those increased costs. Most of Lincoln's ongoing grant funding, such as our multi-year grants, have not kept pace with the rate of inflation. So we don't have 50% more grant funding than we had a few years ago. And I should say those are the ongoing grants. We've had some good news on the application-based grants. I'm talking about the ongoing ones that fund the replacement and rehabilitation of our assets. So I shared this slide with you last year, which compared from 2022 to 2025, and it just kind of shows you during that time frame, the construction price index increasing 28%, our CCBF funding going up 12%, and some of our provincial funding decreasing during that time. We have had good news about our provincial funding increasing for this year, but it does still kind of show you that it's overall, those ongoing grants aren't keeping pace with our inflation. So what is an infrastructure gap? This graph illustrates it. It shows that the cost of maintaining and investing in our capital assets exceed the available funding. The gap existed prior to the pandemic, but it has widened due to that rapid inflation. So at the very top of this graph, the top line is what our asset management plan tells us our capital need is on average every year. And I know it's a solid line that goes from 2020 to 2026, but I've circled 2025 because this is the year we completed it. So we knew it was there. We knew we had a gap. We couldn't really quantify the amount of the gap until this year. Not council, not me. We all knew it was there, but we didn't know the size of it. So now we have a quantification of that gap, and what do we do in response? So you can see from the graph at the bottom of the line, the green line with dashes is the funding that we've been putting into it, and you can see how we've been increasing it. So we have been putting effort into closing that gap pretty significant, I would say, over the last 3 years. So when you see that green line coming up, we're trying to get that eventually all the way up to where the red line is. And our asset management plan says it's going to take us 15 years. It's not something that happens overnight, and that's common. Okay, so that's common in a lot of places that are doing asset management plans. It's not that you can do it in 1 year, you do it over time. And then the yellow line in the middle with the dots is what our actual spend has been over that time, our budgeted numbers. So you can kind of see that at points in time, we were bridging that gap by taking out debt or pulling from reserves, and now we're in a time of rebuilding. So to the point that I made, even in the earlier presentation, I said I wanted to highlight that we didn't have debt. As I was driving here today and I was talking to the staff, I was saying to them, to me, this is saying, like that old song, to everything there is a season. So there's a time to build, there's a time to replenish, right? So we had that time, we have been doing a lot, but we also are in a time right now where we need to replenish our reserves. And that doesn't mean one thing is good or bad, it means this is the season that we're in right now. So as a reminder, the current replacement value of the town's assets is approximately $1.56 billion. 89% are in fair or better condition. The vast majority of these assets must be maintained and eventually replaced. We want to do this in the most cost-effective manner. Sometimes deferring work on the capital program results in higher repair and maintenance costs in the long run, and so we want to invest strategically. Municipalities have only a few sources of funding for capital. We have development charges for growth-related, tax levy, the rates, water, wastewater, and building department, and those can only fund their related costs. We have grants, and then we have donations and other miscellaneous revenues. I want to remind that debt and reserves are tools. They're tools that are used to spread out the cost of capital expenditures over multiple years, but the funding sources remain the same. So I'll give an example with the water rates. We have 3 options when we need to fund something with water rates. We do it in year on a pay-as-you-go basis, or you take out debt, and when the principal and interest payments become due, you pay them with the water rates, or you collect the water rates over time and you put them into a reserve, and then you pull them out when you need the expenditure. In all 3 of those examples, it's being funded by the water rates. It's just the tools that we use and the manner in which we choose to spread those costs over time. And as I mentioned, there's a season, there's a time to use one tool, there's a time to use another tool. But that's all they are tools. Lincoln's primary source of revenue, like most municipalities, is property tax. The town has prioritized taxpayer affordability and will continue to do so. And that's why we're phasing that line up with time. We're not trying to meet it in 1 year. We're taking steps 1 year at a time. Like most municipalities, Lincoln has an infrastructure gap. And our asset management plan highlights the importance of investing in our assets at the right time to maximize the tax dollar. Inflation, economic, and other factors have increased the cost of capital works and emphasized the need to plan for the future, ensure that we're investing sufficient funds in the capital levy and capital reserve funds to maintain and replace our infrastructure as it ages. To ensure financial sustainability, the town needs to increase the amount that is being contributed to capital from the tax levy and the rate-supported operating budgets. So this slide summarizes what we're proposing for this year. At the top, it shows you that the annual levy-supported capital need, according to the CAMP, is $18.06 million. So the slide that I had showed you earlier with all the assets included water and sewer, this is just property tax supported assets. The average annual spend from 2026 to 2030 in our forecast right now, which is funded by the tax levy, is $7.8 million. So that's good news. We don't need to be at that $18.06 million right away, but we do need to get there with time. The average levy annual spend over that time after we issue $24.3 million of debt is $3 million per year. So you can see we've put a plan in place in that forecast while we're building back up the reserve fund. So the 2023 transfer to the Infrastructure Reserve Fund, which we call the IRF, was $1.33 million. In 2024, it was $1.77 million. In 2025, it was $2.47 million. So this is where we see the progress that we've been making. And the proposal for 2026 is $3.12 million. Increasing the transfer to the IRF will reduce the need for debt over the long term. We're putting more money towards capital infrastructure, and this must continue because we need to maintain all of those assets. It's important to reach a sustainable average level, regardless how much is spent in 1 year. So we don't want to, we really don't want to do that pay-as-you-go method that I said because it results in sharp fluctuations for people. We want to smooth it out every year. So the increase for the capital levy is proposed at $650,000, which is approximately a 2.5% increase on the Lincoln portion of the property tax bill, which is 0.92% of the total property tax bill, and it means approximately $56 for the average residential household with a 2025 assessed value of $385,000. With that, I will turn back to where we are in the process and timeline. This is our capital budget meeting. Next week, we'll meet for the operating meeting, and then the 24th is the potential amendment meeting. And so I'll turn it back over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Tunakaitis. Before we get into questions, I just want to make note for yourself, the CAO, and the comms team. I think in that presentation, there was some really good educational information that could really provide a lot of insight for our residents and community about the inflationary pressures. And I think the timing of that messaging, should it be in and around the time that our release goes out, as far as whatever we not approve, but get to the ultimate decision on budget, that I think that message will be well received and provide a lot of context to some of those pressures that everybody's facing. So kudos to you for putting them in there and providing us with that insight up front. So with that being said, we have only one person in the queue. Councillor Brunet, you are first hitter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And that is exactly what I was thinking when I was looking at those slides. I thought they were really, really well done. And I think they can go a long way to, kind of massaging everyone's concerns. I thought they were really, really well done. That said, the infrastructure gap, I'm wondering if you could go back to slide 54, I believe it was, where it showed what our infrastructure gap was. I believe, what was it, 1.56 billion? Yeah, asset value. I think it was slide 54 I wrote down when it was going through.
Okay. Yep, so.
That's okay. So, understanding that everyone, like, you know, the slides were well done. Everyone's dealing with this. Everyone's got an infrastructure gap. Everyone is trying to get as much funding as they can to offset, take it off. That said, it seems every time that we talk about something, we bring in a consultant, at the end of the day, we do a comparison between other municipalities. I understand it's not an apples-to-apples comparison. I understand that rural versus urban, the kilometers of roads that everyone has, I understand. And, you know, we heard from Director Graham tonight, the PCI, you know, we've done it, we've tried to do a good job. You know, we're going to back off a little bit, but he made it perfectly clear we've got to throttle it back up. And your comment about there's a season, very well pointed. But my question is, can we see a comparison with what other municipalities? Because I think it tells a story where some municipalities are lower than us and some are going to be high, and we can point to, you know, what some of these municipalities have done and where we've done well, where we've fallen off. And it's just a comparison. It seems like we do comparisons all the time. I would like to see a comparison on this infrastructure gap, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Through you, Chair, to the councillor, and I mean, the CAO may want to chime in as well, but I think we can work on something. It's not a quick thing to do. Most asset management plans are public-facing. To your point, it isn't apples to apples because how they might have measured exactly their current funding that's available. Is their asset condition based on just the life of the asset, or is it actually condition-based? So, I mean, but you spoke well, like, I know you understand that. So I think we can come up with something for you. I don't know if we can come up with it for you before the next meeting, but we can definitely come up with something for you with the caveat that it's very hard to compare to our neighbors because we are each also unique. And I know that might not be exactly the answer, but I do think it's true. I'm not sure if the CAO wants to add anything, but I think I've summarized. But I will look into that. I will work on something, and we'll come back to you with something.
Yeah, I think that's good, and I think the CAO has a comment.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, maybe just to dovetail to that, and Charlotte and I were talking about this earlier. I think we can highlight for council what our total replacement value is and start to, I think, compartmentalize it. What's our asset condition? Because I think our asset condition, to your point, Councillor, is probably going to have more in that good category than others, which highlights the fact that this council has made some significant investments. And so, yes, there's still going to be a gap at the end of the day, but, you know, how do we stack up where others, you know, others, there's probably more of them that are in the fair to better, I think, is the category, versus good. And so I think that would be good information. So we'll work to provide that as soon as we can.
Thank you, Councilor Bernay. And again, just to give a comment, I know we had this discussion, I think, last term when we were trying to pull comparisons on operational costs for our municipality compared to others. And it is such an apples to oranges to bananas comparison because there's no real-like municipality. Again, they all have different strengths, weaknesses, and from an operation standpoint, again, those numbers were all over the board. And what I thought might be something that worked, again, logically, usually didn't. And I think you're probably going to have a very similar situation with this as well. And it's trying to, I guess, maybe find the best picture. But again, I leave it in your hands to bring some of that back. So, Councillor Mikulik, you're up next.
Thank you very much. Through you too, Charlotte. Just back in July, there was a fiscal report, a financial report that was presented, and there was a chart with various capital projects in progress, design in progress, just different states of those projects. some of them are like 17%, 20%, 7%, all of this sort of thing. And these are all approved numbers, all approved financial commitments that we've made. Do we go back and revisit some of those sorts of capital allocations or commitments and say, look, you know, we've only spent 7%, maybe we don't need to bother spending any more. It's some of them are quite significant, and some of them are relatively little. But I'm just curious if there's been a conversation among staff about revisiting those previously approved projects or things of that nature.
Through you, Chair, to the counselor. So one thing I would highlight is, I know it's challenging that when we bring forward a financial report, it's based on things like invoices received. So that percentage is the percentage of costs that have been incurred up until that date and time, which is not necessarily always equal to the percentage of work that's complete, because sometimes there's a lag from the time that, you know, that work gets done, then it gets billed to the town, you know, there's a payment certificate, it goes through a whole process. So that's one caution I would give. But in short, yes, we are always looking at things like these projects are all approved by council. So if there is a recommended change by staff, we note that in that capital appendix, which you receive for information, and it would be subject to your approval. But if we are recommending that something be either paused, or if we're recommending that something be canceled, we always note it in that report for you, to make sure that you're aware, and that if you had any concerns with that, you could raise it with us. Most things were brought forward for a reason. They're necessary. They might get put on hold. They might have a delay for some reason. Sometimes there's a delay because of a construction period. So you're always naturally going to see a lot more through Q2 and Q3 on the capital projects. But in short, yes, we're always looking, and we're trying to come up with the best value and make sure that there's still things that we recommend proceeding with.
Okay, thank you. I just brought that up just because times change, and so do bank balances, so do reserve balances, so do debt levels. So that's why I want to make sure. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Mikulik and Councillor Murray.
Thank you very much, Chair. Through you to Ms. Tunakaitis. I wanted to just revisit slide number 53, which is the little graph that you're showing about our capital need, what we've been invested, the current funding. You see the one that I'm looking at. I just would like to get a picture around this, because I do understand that the capital the CAMP program is a provincially mandated thing. Prior to this, a lot of municipalities didn't really do this. So as you said, there's always been an infrastructure gap, but there was never an identifiable number as to, hey, this is what it would cost to replace something. So across the province, every municipality was kind of tootling along and thinking about, you know, eventually we're going to have to pay for some of this stuff and going. And now we're all focused in a really different way. So I recognize that some of the gap being identified is in some ways a manufactured challenge. I would like to know what the vision is in 15 years. So the commentary is that, you know, we need to have average put into the bank every year, so that when the big bill comes up, we've got the money to do it. We won't be going into debt to do it. We've got the money here so that we can continue doing that. So is the expectation that in 15 years, if everything goes exactly to plan, that all of our infrastructure will be covered? So, you know what, one of those fire trucks that keep on increasing in cost so exponentially, you know, one of them comes to end of life, and we're going to buy one, and we don't need to go into debt to do it because we've got the funds set up, because it was part of our assets and we've managed it, and now we've got money. So is the future picture that we are fully funded for all of our any replacement required for our assets?
Through you, Chair, to the councillor. Great question. I would say, from my perspective, I do think there's a time for debt. What we would be working more towards is an even more strategic approach to when we use debt versus when we use reserves, because there are still going to be peaks and valleys. There are still going to be ebbs and flows. Even if you reach that level of, say, 26 million, you've still been addressing the backlog that we're going to have from now till then, right? And then you're also still going to have occasionally a massive water main, for example, that needs to be fixed that you might need partial debt funding for. You've also got development-related projects. So those are excluded from here. Our DC projects are not in that number, and sometimes DCs are well-suited for debt because typically what happens is we need to put infrastructure in the ground, then the development happens, and then the DCs are collected later. So I would say my recommendation is that the eventual plan is not to have no debt, but the eventual plan is to have more freedom to be as strategic as we want to be, and only use it for projects that we think are worthwhile, which is what we've been doing up until this point. But it just gives you more freedom, more leeway to do that, and then you just continuously evaluate with time.
So a clarifying question, if I may. So then, if I understand you correctly, the idea would be that we're continuing to build reserves so that we have flexibility and agility, which is excellent. I kind of think about personal finances, which I recognize are very different from municipal finances, but the idea is I have a home and my home is worth X number of dollars, and if I had to replace it tomorrow, I'd have to, my house is worth $500,000, if I had to replace it tomorrow, I'd need to have $500,000, and I don't have $500,000 in the bank. So is it a realistic expectation that we don't have an infrastructure gap? Like, is that reasonable that there is no gap, or is it more reasonable that there is a smaller gap?
Go ahead.
Through you, Chair, to the Councillor. I guess what I would say up until this point is, if you look at that graph that we had pulled up, we started increasing our contribution in 2023. I didn't have that infrastructure gap number yet. I just knew that there was one, and I could look at the forecast, and I could see through that what we kind of needed to be putting away. So I think all of these documents, our water, wastewater financial plan, our DC study, we're always updating them, and our asset management plan is no different. So I see your point that I don't think it's like one moment in time. I think it's that you have goals that you're working towards, and that's why we're not trying to reach that limit in 1 year. We're trying to reach it over 5 years, or over 15 years, and as the time goes on, we'll keep evaluating that. We'll keep looking at those assets, we'll keep evaluating their condition. That's part of the asset management plan. It's part of why we brought a person in-house to focus on asset management and GIS this year, so that we can continually have that information and evaluate it with time. But I feel confident that the increases that we've done so far and that I'm continuing to recommend are necessary based on even just what's in the 5-year forecast.
Okay, thank you very much, Charlotte.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Murray. I believe CAO has a quick comment.
Through you, Mr. Chair, because I think it's a very good question. I think the goal isn't zero gap, it's actually more of a controlled gap. And so I think our goal is not to fix everything, but rather to make sure that our assets are safe, they're functional, and we can financially manage the things that are in front of us so that we don't have failures or sudden failures or failures of infrastructure, and at the same time also don't have tax spikes. So I think that at the end of the day, from my perspective, it is about that controlling of that gap, not necessarily ever where we'll be in a place, because I don't think it's ever financially feasible for any municipality to eliminate the gap, because we're constantly taking on new assets, whether it be through growth or otherwise, and so we have to financially plan for those assets moving forward. And when I think 92% of revenue tools are provincial and federal and not municipal, that makes it very hard to close that gap. So we do need to rely on senior levels of government as well to assist with that infrastructure challenge that we all face. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CAO. And Councilor Majema.
Thank you, Chair Russell. It's been a really interesting conversation. So the question that pops into my head is, over time, we've talked about when we apply for funding from upper levels of government, that sometimes it's taken into consideration that wow, that municipality has a lot of money in their accounts, and, I mean, to what extent would you say that that is taken into consideration, and should we be thinking about that over time?
Through you, Chair, to the counselor, I haven't seen it in my time that a municipality proactively planning financially has disadvantaged them for a grant application. I think sometimes they do also look at things like the overall demographic of the community as well. And so I think taking that into account and making sure we're being responsible, I personally haven't seen that be disadvantageous. I'm not sure if the CAO has any other experience on that to draw from, but it's not something I've seen, so I think we would still be in a strong place in terms of grant applications, because I think often what they're looking more is what you're looking to accomplish with that grant money. Yeah, that's what I would say on that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think the only thing that I would add, and Charlotte and I were recently talking about the recent budget, or federal budget announcement, and how certain funds are apportioned, as well as some of the provincial funds. And so ones, I think Charlotte highlighted, one municipality had received a substantial amount of money, but I think that has to do with the rural nature of it, the remote communities. Some of these federal programs do prioritize or provide some enhanced funding support depending on need, depending on ability to pay, fiscal capacity, but they're very specific. So we have heard that in the past. I think oftentimes council's asked us about OSIF, you've asked us about other types of programs, and why our number doesn't increase, or why X municipality gets more than Y municipality. So some of it is that. I think the ones where we apply to the larger infrastructure stimulus type programs, to Charlotte's point, yes, those don't necessarily penalize or hold us in a disadvantaged position because we have reserves or we don't have reserves. I think it's about the strength of the application, but there are some of those existing programs, like the ones I messaged, where there is priority given depending on rural composition as well as fiscal capacity.
Need.
So a little bit of both, depending on which type of program. Need does weigh in, but depending on other programs, some of the larger grants we've received really is on the strength of the application.
Okay, something to think about. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor Gemma and our CAO for providing some commentary. I see no other questions, so Director Tunakaitis, well done, great information, stellar presentation. Stellar. That's right. We are now going to move on to the next portion of our meeting. We will bring up Fire Chief Hudson regarding the Fire Department 2026 budget. Chief Hudson, please go ahead.
Good evening, Chair and members of council. I'd like to thank you for having me here tonight. Just thought that it'd be a good opportunity to speak to some of the challenges that are being faced in the fire department in the budget this year or coming year. It's a little bit of a dovetail with what the Director of Finance has already presented, and it is a little bit of a precursor to what's coming in the next week in the operating budget, but it's good information. And I should also say, too, it's a little bit of a sneak preview in terms of the fire service. As we all know, that we have a consultant doing a comprehensive fire service review that should be released shortly, and that will spur a number of conversations in the coming months. And this is a little bit of a preview of some of the challenges we're facing. So, all right. Do I control the slides or do you?
Yeah, you can.
Over here. Okay. There we go. All right. Just by way of a little bit of a background, of course, we have 4 fire stations, about 21 vehicles and apparatus in our fleet, 7 full-time, 118 volunteer firefighters, some also call them paid on call, and 12 unpaid auxiliary firefighters. I should mention that we have had a volunteer fire service in this community since 1849, so over 175 years, unimpeded by progress. No, but it started in the village of Beamsville. We had our first organized fire department, and I have to say that in a large part, that same model, the same way of operating has remained unchanged since that time. You know, we have had some advances in technology in terms of, pagers and things of that nature, but really the model remains the same. So we are governed very heavily in the fire service. Of course, the primary piece of legislation is the Fire Protection and Prevention Act, and it actually mandates municipalities to do a few things. We're required to provide public fire safety education, fire prevention, and we also are required to provide fire suppression, rescue, and other emergency response services in accordance with our needs and circumstances. And you may ask, what are our needs and circumstances? Well, that is determined through performing community risk assessments to look at the the risks in the community and how we can best address those. So that is a requirement by the regulations that we do those on a periodic basis as well. So in Lincoln, here's the shopping list of some of the services we're required to do, and I have to say that a lot of these on the list were not in place in 1849. But as you can see, it is quite extensive, and to be able to perform all those, obviously the firefighters have to be trained, have to be well equipped, and they have to be prepared to do that at a moment's notice, because our pagers could go off and we could get any one of these calls in 5 minutes from now. So I should draw your attention to the fact that we do provide, in terms of firefighting, interior fire suppression, which means if there's a structure fire, building fire, we actually are trained and equipped to go into the building to rescue people, remove them, and then actually fight the fire from the inside and put it out at the seat of the fire. Not all fire departments do that. Typically, smaller departments, rural departments, do an exterior fire attack, which basically means you stand outside with hoses and wait for the building to burn down. So that is really determined by the community risk. There's a need for that. So as I mentioned, in order to do that, we have to be trained, and back in 2022, the province came up with some mandatory firefighter training and certification requirements. And you can see the extensive list of the standards that we're required to train and certified to. Most of the bread and butter services, we're supposed to be certified by July of this coming year, 2026. And there are 3 specialty services. They're more technical nature, the technical rescue, such as high-angle rescue, rope rescue, water rescue, ice rescue. We have a little bit more time to get certified. That's another 2 years hence. So that, as you might imagine, has been quite an arduous and expensive process to get everybody up to speed. I'm proud to say that we were a bit of ahead of the curve in that for the last number of years, whenever we hired new firefighters, part of the recruit fire training program has incorporated these standards. So, people graduating from the recruit class were certified in basic firefighting and some of those others. But there are a number that we have to kind of fill in the gaps. And it has been a little bit of expensive proposition too. You can see in order to meet the deadline for what we need to do by July of next year, it's going to cost us, and this is included in the operating budget, about $129,000 just for that alone. So one of the biggest fire department budget drivers coming into 2026 is really the firefighter wages. So you can see that the firefighter wages over the last 6 years have really basically kept up with the CPI that Charlotte mentioned before. Unfortunately, we've been a little over budget to in 5 of the past 6 years, and if it hadn't been for COVID, we probably would have been over that year as well, and I'll explain some of the reasons for that. And we can see where the orange line exceeds the blue line, the overages are a little bit more prevalent in the years where we have an intake of volunteer firefighters, and there's quite a bit of training involved in that, so that is reflected. So as you can see, as I mentioned, the increase cumulatively is about 20%, which is on par with the CPI over that period. The problem is that our demand for service, our fire calls, have increased 55% over that same period. So you can see a bit of a gap there. So our call volume is exceeding our, the increase is exceeding what we're getting, for CPI inflation more than 3 times as fast. And so what that means is there's a bit of a gap, and this sustained growth underscores the need that, we have to invest in our personnel and, to meet that gap. You can also see that, with that increase in calls, that's directly related to the pay. And so, as I mentioned before, our CPI, our budget has been keeping par with CPI at about 20%. And over the same period, obviously, we were up at 55% increase in calls. And so it's not only the call volume that's attributing to this gap, but we also have not only more calls, but the number of calls we are going to are getting more complex. And it's really putting a demand on the sustainability of the volunteer fire service. So really, in a nutshell, we're being asked to do more complex, more calls, more time commitment by the volunteers. And it's really, and as we'll see when the fire service review comes out, it's really putting a real strain on the sustainability in the long term of the volunteer fire system. So in terms of fire calls, a rough average calculation. So when we divide the number of fire calls in 2024 by what the firefighter payroll is, that's about $1,055 on average per call to respond. Add the average truck costs of $280 per call, and you can see a really rough estimate. Every time we get called, it's about $1,300. And one of the huge drivers for us in recent years are false fire alarms. So in 2024, we responded to 190 of them, which is now the most common type of call we go to, which surpassed medical calls. And so if you take that average cost per call, it's costing $250,000 to respond to false alarms. And I should add that false alarms are for a number of reasons. It's not just an alarm system. Somebody pulls the alarm or a smoke alarm or things like that. This also handles things where people actually physically call 911. So I think I see a fire, and it turns out to be steam coming out of a greenhouse or something like that. So there are a number of reasons for it. We look at things like somebody's burnt toast and set off the detector. So although that's not a fire, that's a case where the fire alarm actually did its job. It detected smoke. Fortunately in this case, the smoke didn't grow beyond the toaster, but it still activated a response. But we have also, on the other hand of that, where people have had that, they've had a toaster oven going, and they're left the room to go do something else, and that toaster did cause the kitchen fire. So we have to be careful, though. So about 50% of those false alarms are, I'm going to call, preventable. Either it's the fire alarm equipment was not maintained properly, it was a malicious false alarm, somebody's pulled a pull station, or things like when somebody has a fire drill or they're working on the alarm system, they don't notify the alarms company, and we get called out. So those are absolutely preventable. So we do have, and we have had for a number of years, a false alarm fee bylaw, so we are able to charge for certain false alarms. Currently, we have what we call a first call is free policy. So that in place, that means about less than 25% of the false alarms we go to are really eligible to be billable. And so in an attempt to kind of get this number down, we have proposed in the 2026 fees and charges structure and some increased charges and removal of the first call free for certain false alarms, such as if a technician goes and works on the false alarm, doesn't call us, that's absolutely preventable and they shouldn't get a freebie for that. So we're looking at that to just try to recoup some of those costs. Another huge driver for us is response to the QEW. Because QEW is provincial land, our responses aren't really covered by municipal taxes. So we're able to recoup our costs through the province, through the MTO Fire Department invoicing program. Unfortunately, we only get a fraction of what we should from the MTO. So as an example, 140,000 roughly claimed in 2024 for the 97 calls we had, but our actual costs were over 180,000. So even if we'd got 100% of the claims we'd submitted, there's still a shortfall. Unfortunately, as you can see from the graph, in 2024 was particularly bad, where we only made 36% of the claims. Really, in 2024, due to that shortfall, it cost the taxpayers of Lincoln about $132,000 out of pocket for the privilege of going to the QEW and providing municipal service on a provincial road. And some of the reasons why the MTO does not pay, some they just flatly deny the claims or they reduce the claims as they see fit. Probably the biggest reason is what they term a no service call. So if we get called out for somebody's reported a car fire and we go out there and we say, well, it's not actually a fire, it's an overheated rad. And, you know, we've incurred costs to go out there, but the MTO denies those claims in Southern Ontario. They do allow those claims in Northern Ontario, and that's another story. But there are moves afoot to, lobby the province to address that. And there's, initiatives underway to try to address that as we speak. Another one of our huge drivers is the vehicle operating cost. Over that past 5 years, a little bit of a smaller subset here, the CPI was 17% increase, and operating costs for fire vehicles, we're talking maintenance, fuel, that kind of thing, has increased 39%, so more than twice the rate of inflation. And on top of that, it's taking us longer to get replacement parts, so our fire trucks or our equipment is out of service longer. Some of the supply chain issues that occurred during COVID really haven't bounced back to normal fully. And this is consistent with an American report on the American Transportation Research Institute. Although it's an American figure, it's similar in Canada, where they're seeing about close to a 38% increase as well. So I mentioned, we've been a volunteer fire service for over 175 years. And when I say volunteer, a lot of people really don't realize how that works. So really, when somebody signs up to be a volunteer firefighter, whether it's in Lincoln or most other places in Ontario, so nowadays everybody gets a pager. So they're on call 24/7, 365 days a year. They're always on call. They don't get paid standby. They don't do anything. They're just always on call. Now, obviously, people have lives, so they have to go to work. They have family functions and things like that. So we count on the volunteer firefighters being available about 25% of the time to go to calls. The problem is, as the number of calls increase, the rule of thumb is once you hit about a call a day on average, you're really overly burdening a volunteer system. and we're 850 to 900 calls we're pushing, so we're well above twice that. And, you know, if you can talk to some of the volunteers, it'd be nice if it was just an average of 1 call or 2 calls a day, but of course, it never works that way. You'll go for a few days, and all of a sudden, you're called out 4, 5, 6 calls in a day. And if your employer is gracious enough to allow you to leave to go to calls, they do raise their eyebrows when somebody's leaving their desk 4, 5, 6 calls a day. And in fact, that's just not sustainable. So although we had counted on a response rate of 25% for our volunteers, that is really, really tough nowadays to get. And you can see some of the challenges we're facing, not just in Lincoln, but all across Ontario and throughout Canada. Just the numbers of volunteer fighters are just declining. It just seems people just simply don't have the time or the ability to do this anymore and meet the demands. As I mentioned, the number of calls and the complexity of the calls is increasing. You know, I look at a typical rope rescue call, say Balls Falls, and that can take hours. It's or any kind of a major structure fire. It's a very complex, very dangerous call. It just takes huge amount of training, a huge commitment. As I mentioned, training and certification requirements, and I see one of our fellow firefighters in the audience. He happened to start the same day I did, back in 1988, and I think back fondly where we showed up on the Tuesday night. Here's your boots. The alarm went off. Okay, get in the truck, go. We had no idea what we're doing. Was it a lot of fun back then? Yes, but did that meet health and safety? Did it meet, kind of community expectations for performance? Absolutely not. So I'm happy to see, we've made great strides to keep people safe, to ensure that people go home at the end of the day, but that comes at a cost, not only in terms of money, but commitment for the volunteer firefighters. And again, like anything, the increased call volume, the increased demands on their time, it takes a toll in terms of the work-life balance. And the other thing we're finding too is quite often volunteer firefighters, and Lincoln was the same way, a lot of people lived in the community that they served. And, I look at a lot of the farm people and things like that, the alarm would go off, they were in town, they could just respond to the call. We're seeing more and more as the town changes and grows, we're seeing a lot more people are working out of town, so. So just for context, so Lincoln Volunteer System on the left-hand side there, 24/7, 365 service. We have 15 front-run apparatus, 118 NFPA certified firefighters. And so our budget for wages and benefits for that entire service there is, you can see 1.4 million, and you can see the picture there, what that all entails. For context, you look at one full-time fire truck, that's 4 firefighters on the truck with wages and benefits. That is $3.4 million to staff that on a 24-hour basis. So you can see the tremendous value we have in our volunteer system and the importance it is to sustain a volunteer system as long as we can. I think if I were to crystal ball it, my years of experience says, we're pushing the limits of an entirely volunteer system. That likely won't be next year, perhaps not the year after that, but sometime in the next little while, we'll be looking possibly at least a full-time contingent, maybe to start during the, a shift during the daytime hours to help us out. But I think the parting words here, if I may, is the investment to sustain the volunteer system for as long as we can really is the most cost-efficient and the most effective delivery of service to the community. So, and with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. So.
Thank you, Chief Hudson. We are going to go to Councillor Murray for first question. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Through you to Chief Hudson. Thank you very much for the presentation. Really good information. I will say that today was Take Your Kid to Work Day, and I took my grandkid to work, and we had a tour of the Beamsville Fire Station. It's quite a place, and I know the work you guys do there is very, very important. So thank you for that. I just wanted a little bit of clarity. I know that you have attended AMO and Roma, and you as well as other fire chiefs have advocated to the province. As they're continuing to increase the mandated services, as they're continuing to increase the mandated training that they're requiring of fire services, is there any conversations happening around them also increasing funding? So not through taxpayers, but like the municipal tax base, but through provincial funding. Is there any conversations around that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you for that question. Absolutely. You know, this is something that we've been advocating very strongly for, because every municipality in Ontario and beyond is facing exactly the same budget crunches. I'm happy to say that the province has been listening. The last 2 years, we've had a fire protection grant to start at least getting some funds rolling from the province towards the municipal delivery of fire protection services. The grants, last year and this year as well, the two phases of the grants have focused on firefighter safety, cancer prevention, things of that nature. So they really have put their focus on, the most critical point. We continue to advocate, it's really, we talk about infrastructure gaps and funding gaps. Certainly in the fire service, we have a gap here as well. And we continue to advocate to help municipal fire departments, meet the shortfalls. And because you're absolutely right, not that I begrudge having provincial certification, I do think it's a good thing, but that was enacted with no funding whatsoever from the province. And I know there's a lot of smaller municipalities in particular that really struggle with some of the costs associated with that. So, yeah, I'm a member of Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs. I know from a provincial level, there's a huge advocacy and government relations component to that, and we continue to work and try to get some provincial dollars.
Thank you. Another question, if I could. So then you also note significant increase in demand. And I know you also say some of that is false alarms and other challenges, or people who don't necessarily, you're not used to seeing brush fires. They're not from the country, so they're not used to seeing those sorts of things. I understand that. But what else is driving that increased demand? Is it that we are growing as a municipality? Is it the increased housing that we're seeing that's driving that increased demand, or is there something else at work here?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. That's an excellent question, and that is something we're looking at as well. I think it's a bit of a number of things. Certainly, it's a function of the population growth. It's a function of I'm going to say, dare I say, a changing demographic. I look at some of the expectations, some of the demands that are placed on the fire service now, I think are greater than what we saw maybe some years ago. And I'm going to use the term, perhaps people in years gone past are maybe a little bit more self-reliant. I think of things like somebody hears a smoke alarm beeping. So rather than take the trouble to check your owner's manual on the smoke alarm, say, oh, needs a new battery, let's call the fire department. And not that we begrudge going and helping the public, but I think there's more and more cases of that where there's expectations where the fire service is going to come and provide service no matter what the situation is. And in terms of, there's certainly growth in terms of additional people coming in, additional housing. But part of this too is as the density increases too, that puts a whole different fire risk profile in play as well. So it's not necessarily more fires, although it could be. We'd have to run some more statistics. The fires what we do get tend to spread faster, need more resources and things of that nature. So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying that there's it takes a lot more study. It takes a lot more kicking over the rocks and seeing, some of the root causes of some of this, and that's something that we're undertaking now. This fire service review we're doing is, one of the first steps in looking at that. So.
Great. And my final question, if I could. So you mentioned the MTO and the fact that as a local service, you can claim money back from the MTO, which they don't very often like to give you. It's my understanding that you can also go after insurance companies. So if there is a car accident on the highway that you respond to, you can go after insurance companies. Do you see a lot of reimbursement for insurance companies, or is that similar to the MTO, that it's a struggle to get that payment?
I can say that we do have in our fees and charges bylaw the ability to bill drivers for motor vehicle collisions on local roads. We typically bill the non-residents. And although we've had it on the books for a couple of years now, it's just this year we've actually had the resources to be able to start that. And I can say it's very, very labor intensive to collect that. And, I've had this conversation with my colleagues in finance. Our core service and the fire service is, going to calls and providing emergency services. We're finding more and more of our time is now devoted to accounts receivable, and that's not really our core service. So, we're still trying to figure out some of the logistics involved in that. But it is, although we have been getting some significant revenue from it, there is a cost in terms of resources and people to do it, so.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murray, and we have Councillor Bernay up next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Russell. So Chief, thanks for the presentation. It's quite a daunting presentation that goes way beyond this budget. I mean, I think for the first time in my years as a councillor, I'm hearing from you, from a chief that's been around for 37 years, that, the pressures that we're feeling, or you're feeling, and that we're feeling as a municipality are getting to a bit of a breaking point in such that the volunteer system is in jeopardy in some way, shape, or form. So I look at, all the things you put up there, the call volume is increasing by 55%. And while that's happening, you're looking for a response rate for your 118 volunteers, but that's increasing. So what can we do as a volunteer system right now to look at the way that we do things? And so, through you, Chair, my first question, when we look at response to the highway, and I would never suggest for a nanosecond that we stop going out there, but you just have to go on the highway. Yesterday, I'm driving to Burlington, and there's a 5-car pileup at Fruitland Road and a 4-car pileup at 50. These things are increasing. What can we do as a volunteer system in terms of the way we dispatch, the way we do our call-outs? It's a volunteer system. Obviously, there's an expense when we get out there. And is there any way we can look internally to, just the system that you can't always do things the same way. So I'm wondering, as the MTO call-outs continue to increase, and we're not getting the return, is there any way internally we can look at the way we do our process?
Through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely. That's one of the things we're focusing on. I think back, 4 years ago when we embarked on this shared service pilot with Grimsby, and I think the primary reason for doing that is to address some of the issues you just raised now, Councillor, is, we're seeing increased levels of service. We can't continue to do the same thing over and over again. So, I think some of the thinking there is, if we get together with another department, can we, do some things more efficiently? Whether or not that was successful or not is, a debate for another day. But through that process, though, I will say, to the good, is that we have, the benefit of a study that's going to be released very shortly that looks at some of these things and setting some KPIs, some key performance indicators that we can actually measure so we can make some informed decisions. We're looking at the types of calls we go to, and what kind of resources do we actually need for that? So rather than just shotgun approach, you send everybody to everything, and not that we necessarily do that, but drill down a little bit further. So we look at the risk involved in the different types of calls we go to. Are there types of calls we really don't need to go to that could be better handled by another agency? For instance, right off the top of my head, I think of fireworks complaints. Every year we get a handful of fireworks complaints come to the fire department. To me, it's a bit of not the most effective use of our resources from that, because it's really a nuisance bylaw complaint. By the time the fire trucks get there, the fireworks are long gone, and unless somebody's actually started a fire with the fireworks, that's not necessarily the best agency to respond to that type of a call. That's just one example off the top of my head. And, it's really, like I said, it's going through the list of things we do. What do we need to do? Of the things we do need to do, how do we best match our resources that we're deploying to the risks we anticipate? And that, as you'll hear in the next few months, we'll be spending particular focus on, looking into that, delving into that. There'll be some recommendations coming down the pipe in the coming months to, as we try to evolve and try to address these challenges, we'll be before council more. But in terms of your comment about, you're bringing all this stuff forward in a budget season, and really the main reason for that is because, as you see, this particular year, there were some significant increases in the fire budget in terms of the firefighter wages. And I think it was important to identify, these are the reasons why. It's not that, here's the reasons why. And just trying to, inform council about, some of the pressures we're facing. So when we're looking at the budget, it's more of an informed decision. And, looking at further future budgets too, having this in the back, this is kind of setting the stage for the next few years as well. So.
No, and I appreciate that, and I really like to hear the fact that you're moving forward, looking at KPIs, looking at metrics, so that we can improve.
Yep.
So through you, Chair, this is all good stuff, but it's a little overwhelming to think that, these pressures are being put on us. So, your last bullet point on the bottom of your slide in bold red was it's important for this council to continue to make investments.
Yep.
And I think, as long as I've been on council for 3 terms, I think we've done that. And I think, there is a responsibility to make sure that our volunteer system can be sustainable. But when I look at all the things that are happening and the fact that this is a big budget driver now, we talk about policing, but now fire in Lincoln is a big budget driver. So how can we always talk about communication, talking about surveys and talking about all this stuff. I look at the way other municipalities communicate what fire does. And I was on the website today for the town of Niagara Lake, and I see that every month they put up, I think they call it a dashboard, and I know we used to use it as a Tormont. And it's a pretty valuable tool to communicate to residents. This particular one is an example, 85 incidents in the month of August, 6 fire calls, 29 fire alarms, 16 medical calls, 12 motor vehicles, 6 gas carbon, and 16 assistants. And that goes out every month. And I think if we could do that, it would be a great way for this council to support the fire department, but to demonstrate to our residents, this is why we're investing, and this is what's happening. Sure, people go see when the fire trucks go out and they follow along and, it's just a gas or, a brush fire. Mm-hmm. But these calls are real, and you guys are out in the highway in the middle of the night with Jaws on life. Mm-hmm. I think if we can, I don't know, through you, Chair, to the Chief, I'm wondering what your thoughts on that, if this is a tool that we can be using to make sure that our investment is better understood in the community.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor, I couldn't agree more with you. I absolutely think it's important to communicate, exactly what you said. We did move to a new software provider for our fire records management called First Due. And First Due, actually, we just recently implemented, and we're just doing testing on a forward-facing, a community-facing dashboard similar to Niagara and Lake. So it's not quite up and ready yet, but we're working on it. We're working out some bugs, but that is certainly one of the top things on our work plan is to get that. And again, this dovetails into what I was just saying about the KPIs as well, and our ability to collect this information, put it in, a user-friendly graphical format that it's, very easy to get to from our website. I agree wholeheartedly that we should be doing this, and, we are committed to doing that and fleshing this a little bit more.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that response, and it sounds very positive. But I'm wondering through you, Chair, if the CAO can maybe, put an endorsement on that. I think this is really, really important. And, I don't know when the chief is walking out the door and sayonara and I'm out of here, but you're retiring. And I want to make sure that, this is a commitment that the municipality can support through you, Chair, to the CAO.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the opportunity to weigh in. I just also looked up what Niagara on the Lake is doing, and I know both Director Deanne and Manager Liliana over there are also, I think, looking up what you were talking about right now. And so I think, absolutely, I love the ease and user interface that they've got. There's both a GIS backside to it, but there's also a very public-facing visual piece to it. And I think, it is a large budget driver. I think residents would benefit from knowing the types of calls we go to and what we're actually doing. And I think it lends itself to us being very transparent and communicative in terms of KPIs. So absolutely something that I will work on both with communications as well as the chief.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the opportunity, and I just want to thank Chief Hudson for this presentation. I think it was really well done. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bernay and Councillor Patriva.
Thank you, Chair Russell. Chief Hudson, thank you very much for this. First question, and a couple years ago, you came to AMO with us and we advocated for a change in the Emergency Measures Act around a state of emergency. So knowing that the MTO is shortchanging us and that, do you think that we, this year at AMO, this should be one of the delegations that we go to the Ministry of Transportation to say, hey, pay us for what you owe and stop the nickel and diming?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I've had conversations with the CEO on this very topic. Certainly, AMO is a possible venue. We're also talking about possibly Roma as well coming up.
Yeah, Roma, AMO, OSUM, just keep hammering away at it, right?
Yeah.
Every opportunity we get to reinforce the message and drive it home, like, this imbalance that they pay Northern Ontario firefighting services for this and not the South, it's called S-ing and being. So, second question through the chair. Thank you so much again for slide number 12. And this was the whole rationale behind the shared fire service, is this slide right here. And I know our council got it, right, when we did the interviews, and I would really, really appreciate that this slide gets attached to that December 3rd report when it comes out to show Grimsby Council the misstep or folly of their ways, that this is going to cost them dearly because of the pettiness. So I'm going to stop right there because I can go on for about 20 minutes, but yes.
Good idea. Thank you, Councillor Patriva. Councillor Miklik.
Thank you very much. Through you to the chief, appreciate the, both Councillor Patriva, myself, and the mayor are familiar with this fire and the expense of it all and the complexities of it, being on that board. Question I have is when I look here, total response cost per call, $13.35. Does the public know this? Are they just calling 911 because it's free and they think that, firefighters are just sitting around waiting for a call? Along the lines of the communication piece, I think that if people knew it was costing them, if they saw these sorts of numbers that, hey, listen, you call 911 because your neighbor's trash can's on fire, it's going to cost $1,400. They might think twice about making that call. Do we do any sort of education program on that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Probably not as much as we should, but you're absolutely right. There are things, and I think this comes back to the education piece, or possibly some sort of a dashboard or something of that nature. Frankly, I think some people would be concerned, and I think some people wouldn't care. So I pay taxes. I want to get my fire truck when I call my fire truck. But I think the point is well taken. I think although we don't want to dissuade people from calling in case it is a real emergency, we're trying to instill a sense of fiscal responsibility, I guess you'd call it, to say, hey, if it's something that's not an emergency, maybe there's a better way of handling it. So it's a bit of a tough one, but yeah, I think through education, through whether it's the dashboard or by other means, that it is. But even this number, I think, you're right, I don't think a lot of people would even know what this number was. So if we were even to publish that number, it's $1,300 and some odd per call.
Yeah, I just know Consumers Gas back in the day used to have a slogan, call before you dig.
Yep.
Maybe we think before you call, try to decide for ourselves what sort of an emergency is really an emergency.
And I look at the ambulance service, if you call an ambulance, you're paying $45 no matter what. Do we move to that in the fire service as well? I can tell you it'd be widely unpopular. I don't know if I want to go down that road, but as we continue to face these budget challenges, do we look at different models? I don't know. It's interesting thought.
So another question I had through you is when I look at the one slide slide 5 with the COVID, right? There was a reduction in calls, or there's a suspension of certain medical calls during COVID. I'm just curious, what negative effects did we observe during that time? Did we observe any negative effects of that?
During that time, normally we respond to medical assistance calls to assist the ambulance at medical calls. During COVID, Niagara EMS suspended their tiering criteria, so we would not go to most medical calls unless it was absolutely serious. Part of that was to protect the health of the responders. We didn't want to expose firefighters going to difficulty breathing calls and then catching COVID, and that has a whole other thing. So the COVID years were a bit of a twofold. So we suspended a lot of training, and we suspended a number of medical calls. Like I said, our tiering criteria was modified. And the other piece, too, was, I don't know if you recall, but I can think of times where there was virtually no traffic whatsoever on the QEW. People just weren't driving to work, they weren't commuting, so our MVCs were down quite significantly. So,
Granted, I understand all that. It's just, I think a lot of calls are medical calls, and I'm not sure, I'm trying to understand, what the consequences were with respect to that particular piece and a possible reduction of deploying, 1 or 2 fire trucks for a medical call. And a third question, and it kind of winds back to the calls and firefighter fatigue, and how do we, when it's 1,400, how do firefighters know how many volunteers or paid on-call volunteers are attending racing to the hall? And I ask that question because I happen to be in Ottawa visiting my brother, and he sits on a volunteer fire department, and he has an app on his phone. And I guess it's called Who's Responding, or something like that. And I asked him, I said, wow. And it tells him exactly who's going and what kind of call and everything like that. He says it's a company in Brockville, and it's nice because he knows that 4 guys or 5 guys or 5 people, 5 women, or whatever, are showing up to a call, and he can decide whether or not he skips out of the dinner table or makes that extra effort to go, and possibly reducing like 10 or 12 people showing up for a call that really required 4 or 5. Are we looking at something like that?
So we've had that system for quite some time. It's called I Am Responding, is the one we use, very similar. The problem with that is not everybody uses it. Not everybody has their phone with them at all times. Our primary way of alerting people is through a pager, and depending on, if you're on the tractor or whatever, you might not have your phone on you. So, and then there are simply some people, they just don't, it's not convenient, or they're not technically savvy enough to want to use it. So it is used to a limited extent, and it is helpful for, I'm going to say, the first truck or two, but it's never a 100% accurate depiction of how many people are responding. So, yeah.
I'm not sure. It's just something that he experiences, and he says it's fantastic. I have cell service as well as the two-way radio service, and I can see exactly, it's real time. So that was just something I learned that I'm not sure if, and I'm sure.
Yeah, in an ideal
Thinking
role,
surely.
I'd love for everybody to use it
Yeah.
consistently all the time, but that's just not the
Okay.
practical reality at this point, so,
All
yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mickle. I'm just glad your last question wasn't about our call times during the Spanish flu, so, all good. Councillor Rajema, up next.
Oh, I think I might have, know what happened.
Councillor Reimer, up next.
Oh, no, I do want to talk, I just keep myself like, okay.
Councillor Rajema, back up again.
Thank you.
Next.
Thank you, so. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for all of, the complete presentation and allowing us to give all this thought to things before the operating budget and for years to come. So my question is similar to what Councillor Mikulik was talking about and about the dashboard and education. So you mentioned that some people call because their battery's going off and their smoke detector. That's probably an example of one that, you don't need to go to. You got a lot on your plate. Your whole team has a lot on your plate. Education it's prevention, and it also prevents fires, and it also prevents unnecessary calls. How do you feel in terms of your ability do you have the resources that you need, you and your team, to provide enough education to the public, for example, things like that if the fire alarm is beeping, it doesn't mean that it's a fire alarm. If it's a fire alarm, you'll know it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, great question, because every fire we can prevent through, fire prevention efforts or through public education is one less we have to respond to. It's a lot more cost-effective to send a fire prevention officer to help out with some pub ed or prevention or helping somebody with their smoke alarm. So when I say, I'm recommending that you invest in the service, invest in the volunteers, I think part of that could be, as we continue to grow, not only investing in, the response part of that, but investing in our fire prevention, our public education pieces of the department too. And, this is why some of the key performance indicators are so important, where we can start tracking some of these things. So if we implement some sort of a fire prevention program or a public education initiative, we can actually measure, how effective was that? Can we blitz a neighborhood with smoke alarms, and we can kind of track calls before and after we do that, things like that. Other municipalities are doing that, and I know there's some pretty neat software tools using GIS that people can actually do heat maps of the city to marry up, some of the smoke alarm check programs versus how many calls they get in that same neighborhood, and so, oh yeah, they are working. So we're trying to move towards that. So an investment in prevention and pub ed really is it's a good thing, and it helps to kind of mitigate some of these increasing calls.
I could see that it would. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rangema. Vice Chair Reimer, how about we put a bow on this?
I'm not good with bows, but I'll do my best. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Chief, for this. Thanks for taking the time for this report and bringing it, not bringing it to our attention, but I think reminding us and giving us a marker in time. Slide 11, just one question or sort of one thought safari, maybe. To slide 11, you go through the challenges facing volunteer fire services and your, the recruitment, and I want to focus on the retention part of it, having grown up here and knowing a lot of the men and women on the volunteer service. How do you, in your experience, or are there other things that we can, besides more money and more training, to help with retention? Not that that's the only thing, but I think it's one of the key things. Like, is there a bridge, something between volunteer fire service and full-time fire service that you can go to, or is there I know there's some communities that blend too, but I just that the retention time to one is that you see the retention part is I think is a big factor. Is there something that you can add or that you could say this is something we could use to help retain young men and women in our volunteer service? Through you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this is actually a fairly complex topic. We're talking about how do we motivate people, and we're finding that everybody's got different motivations. We have different generations involved, and what motivates one particular group of individuals doesn't necessarily motivate the others. Some are very focused on remuneration, monetary rewards. Others are looking for more of the experience. Some are just looking for the recognition. So we do have, a number of recognition programs. I should actually start off by saying too that although, we're facing, people leaving and we're dealing with retention, Lincoln is actually doing fairly well comparatively. We usually lose about 5% of our workforce through attrition, people moving on, going elsewhere. That's actually a relatively low number in terms of volunteer fire service. I know a lot of departments around Ontario that, they're double digits easily every year they lose. So we're doing obviously something right. Could we improve? Obviously. And, I look at, the recognition and awards night that council presents every year. I think that goes a long way to recognize, the contributions our folks have, and I know that's really appreciated. And, as we look at the budget every year, and we're looking at must-haves, want-to-haves, need-to-haves, things like that, I know it's always a struggle to keep things in the budget, and, fortunately, we've been able to keep that in, and I think it's really important in terms of investing in our service and investing in the folks we have. So things like that. Are there other things that we can do to keep people, as I say, monetarily? I've heard people throw out things, is there benefits? Are there pension opportunities? Is, a whole gamut of things. And I think that's something that really needs a lot more study. Some stakeholder engagement with some of the people, and just, see what really motivates you and why do you stay. Having exit interviews with people that leave and say, can you explain, what's going on? Why are you leaving? Is it just you're busy in life? What is it? So we're engaging in all those things, but until we get 100% retention all the time and everybody's happy, then, there's always room for improvement. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chair Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, and thank you, Chief, for that in-depth presentation and great Q&A. Just a reminder for everybody to log back into eCube in case you have not. We have a vote coming up. There are no further discussions. I have a motion moved by Councillor Pachariva that committee receive and file for information report FN-12-25 and associated presentation regarding the 2026 capital budget. I will now ask our clerk to open the vote.
Thanks, Chair. And the vote is now open. Thank you, and I will close that vote. That carries, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have no confidential items. Do we have any committee remarks? Oh, seeing none. Just a reminder before we adjourn that, oh, we do. Sorry. Okay, Mayor Easton up first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Council for their very comprehensive questions this evening, and I have made a few notes based on concerns and potential suggestions. I also made a list, I've been making a list for a little while, about additions that may have an impact on the operating budget. So my only ask of you would be to, if you can remember what you've said, because it is a very normal response to potentially make a suggestion to increase service level. I'm not sure what we're going to do with those, because the CAO has been really tearing this operating budget apart. So we may have to have another discussion the next time we meet on the operating budget. And if you want those things to be considered, I believe we need to do that with the understanding that we need to understand that there is no flex in the system, and there will be less flex in the system next year. So we need to go into the operating discussion with that knowledge so that we know where to put our ducks if there's something that's really, really important. And that is my only comment leading off for the next meeting, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilor Bernay.
So through you, I think that's a great point by Madam Mayor, and I know it's her budget, but there was no discussion, like it's in the budget binder, there was no discussion whatsoever with regards to BDSS. So I'm assuming that there's going to be considerable discussion, considering this is probably one of the biggest legacy projects we have in front of us. I'm just wondering, so based on what the mayor is saying, that if we're coming here with some operating, questions that are going to flex the system, I'm just wondering through you, Chair, if the CAO could maybe give us some insight into what we might be hearing with regards to BDSS as we go into November the 12th, because I think it's important that we come prepared, knowing what we've been told by the clerk, that there's some deadlines. So.
Before you jump on, Mr. Seo, again, just a reminder that after the 12th, there is still an opportunity for amendments going into a potential meeting for the 24th, where you can make amendments based on that discussion at the 12th. But Mr. CEO, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, absolutely. I think we can be prepared to answer more questions or maybe provide council more information. Obviously, there's an increased cost as it relates to some of the janitorial maintenance, building supplies, program supplies, and insurance. Year one, we absolutely used our best guesstimate. We used a lot of the information that the school board provided us. But knowing that the school didn't operate it the same way as a municipality operates it, both in terms of hours of operation, after hours, and so forth. And so we can definitely give council a little bit of that information and bring you up to speed, I think, a little bit. And it is in our presentation when we discuss operating, a little bit of, in terms of where we're at, what we've heard, what are the next steps, some of the internal work we want to do, some of the work we want to do with council in terms of setting up a small working group. So yeah, I can definitely be in a position to share more of that come the 12th.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Bernay. Thank you, Mr. CAO. Just a reminder on that amendment process. So obviously we have a deadline coming up of this Friday, November the 7th, for the next submission of amendments. They could be related to capital. They could be proactive related to operations. They would then be positioned at that November the 12th meeting. where we will review and discern whether or not they would get voted on or not. And then there's still an opportunity, if need be, for the following meeting, if there is a requirement on the 24th. So deadlines for that as well. So if you have any questions about that process, again, please reach out to the Clerk's Department or Director Tunakaitis. They can fill out some more information or assist with any templates being filled out. I see no further questions, so I'm going to call this meeting adjourned at 20 hours and 57 minutes. If that's correct, Madam Mayor. Oh, and